Okay, sure.
Great. Thank you, Denise. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alan Lazo. I'm Chair of the Land Conservation and Development Commission. This morning it is Wednesday, July 29th, 2026, and I call this meeting
Pause.
to stop. Yeah. Oh, ready to go again? Okay. All right. I'll start over. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alan Lazo. I'm Chair of the Land Conservation and Development Commission. Today is Wednesday, July 29th, 2026, and I call this meeting to order. We'd like to recognize the administrative and information technology staff, without whom this meeting would not be possible. They are John Dunsmore, James Kopovich, Ingrid Caudell, Brandy Elmer, Jess Miller, and our commission assistant, Denise Johnson. Thank you all for making our work possible. Denise, could you please continue the meeting this morning?
Good morning. My name is Denise Johnson. I am the Commission Assistant for the Land Conservation and Development Commission. Before we begin, I'll make note of a few things, including best practice for participation. Recordings of the Commission's meetings are available on YouTube. For those individuals joining us via Zoom, please use the public comment sign-up form on our website. While 3 minutes for public testimony is typical, the chair may reduce the time according to the number of people signed up to testify and other scheduled demands. Zoom participants, please rename yourselves with your first and last name so we can identify you and bring you forward at your opportunity to speak. Zoom participants will be in listen-only mode until called on to testify. Again, we thank you all for being here with us today. Chair Lazo, the meeting is yours.
Great. Thank you, Denise. Commissioner Bennett, you have your hand up. Is any technical difficulties on your end? Well, the technical difficulty was the hand. All right. Good to see you all this morning. All right. Thank you, Denise. Could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bennett.
Present.
Commissioner Falconer.
Here.
Commissioner Condor.
Present.
Commissioner Porter.
Present. My camera's not working though, so bear with me.
Okay. Commissioner Scar.
Present.
Commissioner Warren.
Here.
And Chair Lazo.
Here. Great. Thank you, Denise. We will now approve today's agenda. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda? Director Bayman, do you have anything to add to the agenda?
No, thank you, Chair.
All right. If there's no proposed changes, then the agenda for our meeting today is adopted. And we'll begin with our first agenda item. So we'll begin with Ethan Stuckmeyer for agenda item number 2, the Middle Housing Oregon Homes, the Moore Housing rulemaking. Briefing and public hearing. Ethan, please introduce your team.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. For the record, my name is Ethan Stuckmeyer, manage the housing division here at DLCD. I'm joined today by Becky Catino, who will introduce herself once we get into the presentation. She'll be doing most of the presentation. I also wanted to highlight again that the purpose of today's meeting. So today we're asking the commission to open and hold a public hearing on the Moore Homes Phase 1 rulemaking. Becky will do an overview of that rulemaking and the process, some of the rules. We also are going to be joined by some folks from the Building Codes Division who will be overviewing their connection into the Oregon Homes program. Those two Building Code Division representatives are Alana Cox and Todd Smith, who again will introduce themselves once they join us during that part of the presentation. I also wanted to highlight that this is because of the nature of the public hearing, we may not use all of the time outlined in the agenda today, or we may find ourselves in quite a bit of discussion. And so the time is a little bit variable. And in addition to the public hearing, this is also a commission's opportunity to share feedback with staff so that we can incorporate that feedback into a final set of recommended rules that will come to the commission next month in August. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Becky, who will run us through the presentation.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Becky Catino, her housing planner at DLCD, and I will having some trouble with the share screen option. Sorry, technical issue. Hopefully working on that in the conference room there.
Thank you, Becky. It's Kirsten Green here, just murmuring in as Deputy Director to support. Did you you probably requested to share? I noticed on my end that there was a little send request button when I tried to share.
Mine is saying host disabled participant screen sharing, and I'm not seeing.
Sure. Please hold. I'll get there. Thank you. There are several ways to address this, so I know Denise has a copy if needed, so stay tuned. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you for whoever's sharing that. I do think that I have the option now, and I may take over so that I don't have to ask anyone else to advance slides. So I'm going to do that. Really appreciate your patience. All right. On the agenda today, we have the legislative background, the rulemaking effort, overview of the Oregon Homes program, doing that ahead of draft rules to get that ground understanding, then covering outreach and engagement, highlighting rulemaking key dates, and then moving into the public hearing portion of the meeting. There were two bills passed during the 2025 legislative session that make up this rulemaking effort. The Middle Housing Bill 2138 is to support middle housing production by making adjustments to Division 46 of OAR 660, middle housing in medium and large cities. This bill will include conforming updates to definitions of middle housing, and of note, the bill also calls for the development of a statewide model system development charge, but that's not part of this phase one rulemaking. So stay tuned for that work coming up here after this phase concludes. And on the other side of the slide is the Oregon Homes 2258. This will provide a suite of housing developments that must be permitted by local governments on eligible lots based on state building code and state established land use standards. And overall, it's meant to reduce the time and variety of the permitting process through the state for common residential types on low barrier sites. Moving into the rulemaking effort, as a reminder, Commission initiated this rulemaking charge in October of 2025. And just to highlight elements of the charge, is to implement principles of the statute, emphasize improving efficiency in the development process and to remove barriers, and to establish clear criteria for the Oregon Homes program. A rulemaking advisory committee was formed with a diverse range of perspectives, and I'll just highlight that include really crucially local governments, both small and large cities, as well as developers of affordable and market rate housing. 6 meetings were held between February and July of this year. And also note that pre-recorded materials were used in advance of the meeting, which is unique to this rulemaking and hopefully will be carried forward as it added more time to the meetings for discussion. And speaking of discussion, I will be covering in depth the rulemaking advisory committee discussions, but that's going to come later in the presentation. Just really want to emphasize how crucial that feedback is in crafting rules. All right, so first diving into the Oregon Homes program. The problem Oregon Homes is seeking to solve for is a developer may have the same plan set, but will have to go through a unique development review process for every local government that they're hoping to build in. And what Oregon Homes does is to create a pathway for developments that can meet the state established standards, both for land use and building, for on lots that have a specific set of criteria that then the development would qualify for an expedited development review. And we know that an expedited development review is crucial for cost savings for developers, which when we're talking housing cost and is very crucial to providing more housing to Oregonians. So to say this as plainly as possible, if a lot meets the criteria of the Oregon Homes program and the proposed building meets the Oregon Homes criteria, then that proposal would be eligible to participate in the Oregon Homes program. This is a statewide program, but I will cover here the criteria for what makes an eligible Oregon Homes lots may actually exclude then certain communities in Oregon, as the lot has to be lawfully established and within a UGB. So that's the point, that maybe not all Oregon local communities would be able to participate in the program. The lot also must be zoned residential, be at least 1,500 square feet and no larger than 20,000 square feet. It must not be covered in slopes more than 15%, and it must not be inventoried as an environmentally sensitive open spaces or in a naturally hazard area. Now here's when I apologize for this slide of the extremely tiny text. I'm sure you can't really read, but it's important to include this asterisk for both of these last criteria. So that first criteria around environmentally sensitive open space and naturally hazard areas. In statute, that would be wholly excluded if the lot had even a portion covered in those areas. But we've clarified through rules that if the developable area of the Oregon Homes development is wholly outside that area, then that lot may then be eligible for the Oregon Homes program. And lastly, the lot must be vacant, and there's several sub requirements as listed on the slide. And I'll just highlight there the importance that a residential use that was on the site that has been demolished, that demolition must have occurred at least 5 years ago. The OCD staff conducted GIS analysis for 2 cities to determine how many lots would be eligible to participate in Oregon Homes. So starting with Monmouth had roughly 50 tax lots, or 2% of their total tax lots, and Eugene had roughly 250 tax lots, being only 0.5% of the total lots. And I say roughly because the analysis here relies on GIS data layers that are often imperfect. For example, environmental constraint layers that can make a lot ineligible is not always available or not always fully up to date. And this does not include demolition data, as that's often more difficult to add that geospatial element to the data as well. All this is to highlight that the total number of eligible lots in any given local government within Oregon is relatively small, as that lot needs to be flat and relatively unencumbered. So that's the land use. Chair Lazo, I see a hand raised.
Great, thank you, Becky. Yeah, Commissioner Warren, did you have a clarifying question?
Yeah, Chair, do you want those now through the presentation, or do you want me to wait till afterwards?
Ethan and Becky, what would you prefer?
It's up to you, Chair. We're happy to answer questions if they're helpful in understanding the rest of the presentation, core
Yeah.
policy elements. That seems appropriate.
Yeah, if there are clarifying questions as we approach them, let's do that. But we'll try not to stray too far afield.
I'll try to keep it brief. I think it's important clarification. Can you go back a slide, Becky? So when we're talking about vacant lots, I noticed that one of the provisions is can undergo a recent land division. And that's correct, right? So to use Eugene as an example here, this 250 tax lots, this is an existing definition for what vacant would be, not what the potential is. Is that correct? Because if someone's going to do a land division, like a middle housing land division, they can then qualify to use the Oregon Homes program. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that with that provision, 250 is not accurate whatsoever, because pretty much any lot in Eugene can be divided using the middle housing land division process, which is fairly simple and straightforward, and then they could choose to use the Oregon Homes program.
Yeah, Chair Lazo and Commissioner Warren, it's hard to map and identify the kind of potential of that those divisions, but these numbers are based on the existing lots and the tax data or the tax lot information that DLCD had access to in both of these jurisdictions. But you are correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Go ahead, Becky.
All right. And I'm actually going to be handing it over to the Building Codes Division to talk through. This is the building side of the Oregon Homes program, just covered the lot or land side. So this slide is just kind of a highlight that our colleagues at the Building Codes Division will cover if they're ready and able.
Thanks, Becky.
Hi, good morning. I'm Alana Cox. I'm the Deputy Director of DCBS. I'm just going to give a little context for the building plan review piece of this here, and then my colleague Todd Smith is with us as well to get into a little more detail, but we'll be brief. I understand this commission has heard a little bit about this already, so if we could go to the next slide, please, Becky. I'll just kick us off with a little context for the language regarding plan review that ended up in House Bill 2258. Then my colleague Todd will go into a little more detail on the different types of plan review. One point that's important to understand up front is that any type of plan review in Oregon is doing the same thing. It's checking for building code compliance. And this is possible because we have a single statewide building code. So local plan review is checking for the same building code compliance as master plan review or permit ready plans. So that being said, a little context on the bill. So way back in 2025, when this bill was under consideration at the legislature, I was the administrator of the Building Codes Division. And I worked on the language that ended up in the bill with DLCD and the governor's office. And the intent of the language, which was communicated at the time with the committee and others, was to allow for all types of building plan review for Oregon Homes, because building plan review is checking for the same building code compliance. And because, as you will hear from Todd, there are limitations on building types in some plan review categories, and we wanted customers to have choice to use the best plan review pathway that worked for them under their program. So the language was intentionally inclusive. That was communicated to the committee at the time. And with that, I'll turn it over to Todd to talk a little bit about the three types of plan review on that next slide. Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you, Alana. I'm Todd Smith, Administrator of the Building Codes Division of the Department of Consumer and Business Services. As Alana mentioned, we want to provide some additional information about the 3 plan review paths that are available to the customers, some advantages of each, and some of the limitations that might drive customer choice to a particular path. All these paths, review paths, are pre-existing programs that were leveraged to integrate with the Oregon Homes program. The first one I want to talk about is our master plan program. Master plan review is where a customer submits their own plans and BCD performs the plan review. Once approved, these master plans are available to be used anywhere in the state and the residential building where the residential building meets the local environmental design requirements of the code. These criteria are like life safety factors such as snow loads, seismic zones, wind loads, those kinds of things on the design side. As mentioned, the master plan program is an established program. BCD has done some updates to the process and some outreach to potential customers in an effort to make sure the program is ready to work with Oregon Homes program, as well as support any residential builders that want to use the program. Some advantages on the master plan side, there are no design limitations, so any type of building can be used. The ownership of the plans remains with the customer. Simplified plan review, local plan review process that verifies the plans are approved by the state and that the plans are compatible with the site-specific conditions that I just mentioned. And there's potential to reuse the same plan multiple times for multiple projects in multiple locations throughout the state. However, there's some drawbacks on this path. The first is that the approved plans are only approved at the end of the code cycle. BCD adopts codes on a 3-year cycle, and we'll be adopting the 2026 residential code here coming up in October. Second is that since these plans are pre-approved and be used statewide, the BCD plan review process is slightly more rigorous than the local review in that it requires clear documentation and updated plans for any design changes. This differs from the local review process, which can resolve minor non-life safety changes through more informal channels. Moving on, we'll talk about the Permit Ready Plan program. This program is another BCD program, and under Permit Ready Plans, BCD provides the plans that have had plan review completed already and that are available for use by customers. Some advantages on this side are these plans are available from the division for use anywhere in the state that they meet those design criteria we've already talked about. And the local plan review, again, is a simplified plan review process, verifying that the plans are part of the Permit Ready program and that they are compatible with the site-specific conditions for where the building is going to be located. Some limitations on this one. The plans are provided as is and cannot be modified in any way. And this includes any requested changes or modification once construction begins. BCD also can't offer design support. So once these plans are started, any design support would need to come from a third party. And these plans also will expire at the end of the code cycle, and statutorily they are limited to 1 and 2 family dwellings. And brings us to our third path, the local review plan review path. This is a normal path that builders are familiar with when they submit plans to jurisdictions. Local jurisdiction will perform the plan review, and it can only be used on the one site that it's located on. Some advantages here are familiarity and flexibility. Builders are used to this path, and local building officials have discretion and flexibility to find solutions to any issues that crop up during construction or requested design changes. The local building official can keep plans valid beyond the current code cycle under some circumstances. And local plan review can be part of a local master plan process as well, allowing the plan to be used in multiple places within that single jurisdiction. But it doesn't go beyond those jurisdictional bounds, and all residential building types are allowed. Thank you for giving us a couple minutes to provide some background, and I will turn it back over to Becky.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to add a little on to the requirements for the structures through the bill. It was clearly laid out the types that are allowed, so attached or detached single unit dwellings, ADUs, prefabricated, modular, and plexes, do, tri, and quad, as well as townhomes, and then multi-units have a limitation on the number of units the building would have, so more than 6 and fewer than 12, and cottage clusters are also allowed. The building types, the first bullet there, may not be more than 2,200 square feet and have an average per unit size of not more than 1,400 square feet for cottage clusters. So when a local building department or official is reviewing, that's the criteria that needs to be met in order for that building or buildings to participate in the Oregon Homes program. So I'll end this overview of Oregon Homes with this graphic to show the full development review process for an Oregon home. So a builder or developer is going to have identified an eligible parcel or lot within a local government. They will also have either building pre-approval through the state, or will have identified an eligible building type plan set that they will then submit to the local planning or land use reviewer department. And that official or planner would review the development under the Oregon Homes program criteria, and they would also be allowed to review using the public facilities plans, final engineering plans, and traffic impact analysis, anything that would be required from that. And then again, they're showing that the local building plan review would need to occur if there was no pre-approval. And given all of that, if all of the criterion standards are met, then that building or buildings would be approved under the Oregon Homes program and would move forward in the construction process like any other development. All right, switching gears to the overview of draft rules.
Hey, Becky, if I could interrupt you, Commissioner Condor has her hand up.
Hi, good morning. Just a couple of questions. So the plans actually haven't come out yet to see like what you're proposing, like what this would look like from the state perspective, like, right? There's nothing that's actually been designed yet that we can point to and kind of evaluate.
Jay Lazo and Commissioner Condor, it's a good question, actually. Alana or Todd, if you might be able to answer that question in terms of the status of things like the permit-ready plans, for example.
Sure, thank you, Todd Smith. I can take that with building codes. Yeah, we are currently in process. We're procuring an ADU plan as well as a single-family plan from a designer. Those are currently going through our internal review, and then part of our permit-ready plan process requires them to go out to our local building officials for 30 days to get some local feedback. We're hopeful that those will be out next month, but yeah, they're not quite there yet, but they will be soon.
And then will there be a multifamily plan? I think I heard you say single family residence and an ADU plan.
Yeah, statutorily, we were limited to 1 and 2 family dwellings under the permit ready plan statute currently. So that's where we're at the moment. You know, we've been in some discussions to see what else we could be doing on the multifamily space with the governor's office, but we're not quite there at the moment.
Okay. I guess it's not as interesting then, because in a multifamily, I'm like, I don't know how you do this with civil and back a house, because that thing's all dependent on where you tie in. Okay. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Warren.
Yeah, just a clarifying question. You don't actually have to use a pre-approved plan to use the Oregon Homes program. Is that correct?
From the building code perspective, no. You can go through the master plan review process, or you can do the local plan review process. And that's kind of where you'd capture some of those multifamily dwellings that we were discussing earlier.
Thank you. I also had a question. I think this is for the DCBS folks. I guess Todd, I'm curious, how's the local plan review pathway under Oregon Homes different than sort of the existing local plan review process for developers? How does that difference exist under Oregon Homes?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. From my perspective, And the building code perspective, it probably isn't very different because you'd probably be going through that same plan review process, but you'd be able to leverage the land use side and their pre-approved plans on we're talking about through DLCD. But if there's questions on that, I'd definitely refer back to Becky or Ethan on that side of things.
Oh, okay. Appreciate it. Yeah, go ahead, Ethan.
Yeah, Chair Lazo, I think from the Oregon Homes program perspective, the review at the local government for the building itself through the local plan review, like Todd is mentioning, will function probably very similarly to how it functions now for any other kind of development. The entry point into the Oregon Homes program and the use of that builder of the standards that are up for discussion today from the land use perspective is what would change. They would be subject not to those development standards that might exist for those housing types, and instead, if it meets all the criteria in terms of the lot and the building type that's being proposed, they have access to the Oregon Homes siting and design standards and other development standards that are discussed in the proposed rules today.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I have two questions. My first one was, is there a time frame that the local building official would have to complete it? And then Ethan just mentioned avoiding those normal hindrances, and I was hoping he would elaborate a little bit on what is considered a normal hindrance, because that may affect the discussion later on today. Thank you.
I can start off with the local building official question. There are some timelines that exist in statute already for residential plan review requirements, so they'd be on those. Most residential plan reviews for simple dwellings get through pretty quickly in most jurisdictions, and if not, those building officials have some options, including like third-party plan review or using like an IGA through some agreements with their local jurisdictions or through us at the state to take over some of those excess to make sure that we can prioritize those plan reviews on the residential side.
Thank you, Todd. But that's in the eye of the beholder of speed. And I was just wondering, city planners are limited to 120 days, county 150 days. Is there any discussion or of what that would mean in reality? Because yes, getting through pretty quickly, perhaps by the local building official, is going to be one by the developer, I can tell you probably, and the landowner a lot longer.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. But well understood. Yeah, I agree. The timeliness is definitely in the eye of the beholder on that one. It's a tough question to answer because it really depends on what's going on at the local level and how complete the plans are. So on the pre-approved side, obviously they're pre-approved, so there's not going to be a whole lot of process on that one. On the local approval path, it really depends on the quality and state of the plans that get delivered and kind of what those corrections may or may not look like. So it's a tough one to provide an exact time frame on. Like I said, there are some deadlines in statute already in the building code statutes that require plan to be on residential to be done within, I believe, 10 or 15 days, depending on the size of the jurisdiction. But yeah, there are a lot of factors that can come into that one.
Great. Thank you, Todd.
And
All right.
Chair
Go ahead,
Lazo,
Nathan. Yeah, just want to add something? Yeah.
Yeah, the second half of Commissioner Bennett's question was about the standards that are applicable to those developments should they seek to use the Oregon Homes program. So I want to take us back to the origin of the policy intent, which is to standardize the standards that are applicable to developments that meet these specified conditions. And the rules that are proposed today and in front of the commission today for the public hearing establish those land use standards that would be applicable in these Oregon Homes development scenarios. That is intended to standardize those regulations across the entire state, so that there isn't this situation where builders are building substantially the same exact development in one jurisdiction and being subject to other land use and zoning standards in a different jurisdiction. That's the policy intent of the Oregon Homes program. And so to create that standardized pathway, the Oregon homes that are reviewed at the local government level shall only be subject to those Oregon Home Program criteria that have been established in these proposed rules in front of the commission today.
Thank you, Ethan. Commissioner Scar?
Thank you. Question for building codes. Todd, I think I heard you say that you were getting one ADU plan and one home plan. Are we expecting to have just one plan that is in this permit ready pool of plans? And then my second question is, when we deliberate next month, will we also have access to building codes in case we have questions that come up? So that's probably that one's for staff. Thank you.
Yeah, you heard me correctly. Currently, we are working through one ADU plan and one single family home plan. We're in some discussions with some local jurisdictions that have an additional ADU plan to see if we can leverage that one as well into the permit ready plan program. Historically, the permit ready plan program has been limited to non-habitable dwellings. So this is kind of a new area for us. So we're taking it a little bit slower to see what we can do and make sure that as we do the rollout, it makes sense. But yeah, we're interested in making sure we can expand it if it makes sense and where the directions that the customers want us to take it as we kind of get some more familiarity with this one. And then I can volunteer. Yes, we can definitely be available if the commission would like us to be available at the next meeting.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Warren.
Yeah, I think just to make sure that we're all on the same page, Ethan, can you talk about how a local jurisdiction's zoning code would apply?
Sure, Chair Lazo and Commissioner Warren, we'll definitely get into some of those specifics in the actual rule discussion. But in terms of an overview and summary, I'll again reiterate, and we're on a perfect slide for this. Should a builder bring a qualifying Oregon home development, whether that's pre-approved or at the local plan review option, and propose that development on an eligible Oregon home lot, the city shall review those development applications under the Oregon home standards that are being proposed here today. So those are the standards that apply, and the local government would apply only those standards, albeit there's also options and ability for local governments to apply their public facilities reviewing those final engineering plans and the traffic impact analysis where it might be applicable. But those 4 bullets in the middle of the screen collectively are the standards by which Oregon home developments would be reviewed against.
Correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing you say is the local jurisdiction's zoning code would not apply.
That is correct. In some instances, there are things like minimum density requirements that would need to be met of the underlying zone, but those land use standards would only be the ones in the Oregon Homes program that a local government could apply to those developments.
Great, thanks, Ethan. So let me follow up Commissioner Warren's. So local zoning code elements, the elements that are not prescribed in the Oregon Homes design criteria standards would apply from the local level. So only the ones that have been prescribed in the draft rules would apply to Oregon Homes. The rest of the local ones would still apply.
No, Chair.
You could not apply those. Okay.
Right. Correct.
Got it. Thanks. Okay, Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. And Ethan, you can answer this later on in the presentation. But so if you have a historical design area or I've tried to figure out how to ask this, but I guess I'll be blunt about it. But if you were in found part of say Lake Oswego's UGB, and now you wanted to build a multi-family house, and I probably shouldn't pick on Lake Oswego, so someplace that has it, that's different from Unity Oregon? How's that? Is it wide open? Is that how I am to understand this?
Well, Chair Lazo and Commissioner Bennett, I want to, Becky, maybe you could go back to, I think it's slide, must be 4 or 5. Sorry for the scroll. This one, no, one just after. Yes, okay. So these are the lots on which the Oregon Homes criteria, this one of 2 criteria would need to be met. So on a qualifying lot, these being the qualifications for the potential development of an Oregon home, that would be any of these lots. So lawfully established within UGB zoned residential, at least, of the certain size, not with the slope, and on these specific inventoried resources and protected areas. So these are I'm trying to figure out how to answer your question. So it's not it's specified conditions, these being those specified conditions in terms of the actual qualifications of the eligible lot in terms of the actual location of the potential development. And then we also have qualifications for the actual development itself, the actual residential development. It has to be those kinds of housing types. Both things have to be true. They have to be an eligible lot and an eligible development type to have access program.
So in theory, in Baker City, which has historical design and in a major portion of the city, if there was a vacant lot which met those standards, the historical design criteria would not apply.
Chair Lazo and Commissioner Bennett, yes, correct. Those standard, or the eligibility of the lot is related to environmentally sensitive areas, those with natural hazards, open space, and scenic.
Great. Thank you, Ethan, and thank you, Commissioner Bennett. Commissioner Porter, and we'll move forward if it sounds like some of the questions may be answered moving forward. But go ahead, Commissioner Porter. It's your question, please.
Thank you. And I think I was having some technical difficulties, so I know I missed part of the presentation, so I'm kind of catching up, and I apologize for that. Did I hear someone say that this does have a sunset provision?
Commissioner Porter, this does not have a sunset provision.
Okay, I thought I'd heard that in the presentation, but I didn't see it in the materials. So thanks for clarifying.
I'm wondering if what you heard maybe was from Alana and Todd about the sunset of the master plan and the pre-approved plans at the end of the building code cycle. Maybe that's what you're referring to.
That was probably correct, Chair. As I said, I was trying to get my camera to work, and so I was somewhat distracted. That's probably what it was. So thank you.
But if you want, Todd, could you repeat that section of that? I think that's maybe where it is, because that sounds like a sunset of those particular elements.
Happy to go over that topic again. So, we adopt our building codes on 3-year cycles. The residential code is coming up for a 2026 adoption here in October. Through the statewide permit ready and master plan review process, when those plans are approved by the state, they're approved for that code cycle. So once that code cycle ends, those plans would then need to be updated and go through our process again to be reissued for the next code cycle.
Okay, thanks. So every 3 years, they would need to sort of be reapproved against the new set of building codes.
Correct. Yeah, to make sure that they're in compliance with the new code.
Okay, for those 2 programs. Great, thank you. Commissioner Condor.
Thank you. Can you I understand, well, I think I understand the local plan review, the permit ready plans, but I don't quite understand the master plan review. Can you describe that to me again? I'm trying to figure how multifamily and just if this is limiting density, right? Because that could be problematic.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, happy to go over that one again as well. So on master plans, This is essentially where a developer or a builder would take their own plans that they've developed themselves to the state for review. It would go through a master plan review process of the state, and then we would approve them to be used anywhere in the state that would meet those design criteria that the structure or the house or the multifamily building is designed for. So that would include multifamily on the master plan review side.
So in theory, I could come to the state with an 80-unit design that was, I don't know what the height limit, I thought when I did some research here, is like 35 feet. Is that the height limit, or what's the height limit's gonna be on a multifamily?
Go ahead, Ethan.
Yeah, Chair Lazo and Commissioner Condor, in the proposed rules, we're not proposing a maximum height standard.
Okay, so no height standard, so I could come to you with a 6-story, 80-unit building to get approved, and then that would give me the right, as long as I had the proper site for it to fit on. I could do that in any jurisdiction, 6 stories.
One clarifying question. So eligibility under the Oregon Homes Program has an upper cap. It's 11 units to be a qualifying multi-unit development. So not 80 units, just up to 11.
Oh, okay, so 11 units per building, but could I give you a master plan where I said, I'm gonna do 10 of these 11-unit buildings? And
Okay, good question. I think we're and this is something that we've bumped up against in the rulemaking as well, as the use of the phrase master plan review. So from a land use perspective, master plan, several lots like a subdivision, traditional subdivision, where you're planning out the development that's likely to happen within that subdivision. From building codes division perspective, and Todd and Alana, you could probably correct me if I say this wrong, but master plan review is a review of a plan that is submitted to building codes for approval for use across the state. So and when I say plan, it's a building plan, a singular building. But Todd and Alana, please correct.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ethan. You got it right. Yeah, our terminology is similar and not quite the same. So on the building code side, yeah, a master plan review is referring to a set of master plans that can be reused multiple times throughout the state. So from the building code side, that's what we mean by master plans. And then as long as that fit within the criteria of the Oregon Homes Program, it could be used in the Oregon Homes Program, if that makes sense.
so in theory, I could get a 10-acre lot and subdivide it into the lot sizes and replicate this 11-unit building, and nothing could because a lot of the times, from a practitioner's perspective, in these larger parcels, some of these jurisdictions are like, we want certain roadways, and we want this, and we want that, and we want to turn around a half mile away, and we want a playground, or we want all these things. I guess that would that be foregone then, or would that really get held up then in the land use, like splitting the parcel?
Yeah,
Right?
Chair Lazo.
Really say, like, what are you going to do on this parcel, right? You can just subdivide it. There's no checks and balances there for infrastructure and right-of-way improvements from a parcel perspective, right?
Chair Lazo and Commissioner Condor, at the time of the initial subdivision, so incorporated into the Oregon Homes Program is not the land division itself. The land division takes place outside of this regulatory framework. So any of the standards that are applicable to the subdivision, whether it's identifying roadways and tracks for stormwater and those kind of things, would still take place under that traditional subdivision process. And then on each of those individual lots, a builder might say, okay, I would like to build this Oregon home on lot 1, this Oregon home on lot 8, and utilize the program on those individual lots, but not at the subdivision master planning stage. So those things like street rights of way and parks and things like that get incorporated into that traditional subdivision process that are not impacted by this Oregon Homes program.
I don't know if that's true. I'm gonna have to look into that because I'm just thinking of the times that I have done partitions or, you know, different types of lot line adjustments. That's not really the entitlement process. Do you know what I'm saying? That's not when they're telling me what kind of roads I need to put in, or that they want a park, or that they want this, that, or the other. I'm trying to think like how this literally goes down and what rights at the county level or that they have, right? When you're doing these types of things. I'm just trying to game it out as a developer, like how would I get to, you know, doing this on a big scale? And what would that mean? So, okay.
And it's I would describe it as a sequential process, even though that application might be the same application that you submit to the city to do the subdivision and the development proposal all at the same time. But the Oregon Homes program only applies to the development on an individual lot, not the subdivision of that lot or the partition of that lot, which is outside of the Oregon Homes program, and those standards that a local government might have still apply to that subdivision.
So I think that the upper limit is 20,000 square foot lot up to 11 units is what you're saying, anywhere.
Correct.
Anywhere that has a residential zoning.
Right.
R1, R5, whatever the R is.
Correct. And you also had one point, which is the reason why I had my hand up, about density. And I wanted to call out one of the criteria in House Bill 2258 is that even all of that being true of okay, I can build a single unit detached or an ADU or whatever the case may be. One of the criteria is that those developments still meet the minimum density requirements on that particular lot. So you wouldn't have access to the program if the minimum density is such that you can't build a single unit detached, even if it is an Oregon home. You still have to meet that minimum density requirement of
Okay,
the
so
underlying
that's the
lot.
floor. We know
Right.
what the upper and lower limits are. Okay, good. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Commissioner. I want to check in real quick with Commissioner Warren, Commissioner Porter. We're going to lose Commissioner Scar in 8 minutes, and I don't know if it would be beneficial for us to return to Becky's presentation so that Commissioner Scar could hear that. This has been a really fantastic discussion, so I don't know which of those two would be more beneficial.
Chair, I just have one really quick clarifying question that's fundamental, if I could, and I'll take a second, I imagine. If that's okay, it'll help me get an better understanding going forward. So Ethan, I think this is for you, or maybe Todd. So there's the 3 reviews, the master plan, the permit ready, and then the local review. So just to make sure I understand this correctly, if one goes through the local review, the local planning office or building code enforcement office, that their review is going to be limited to what's outlined in the statute. Is that correct? Do I understand that correctly? On the local plan review?
And Commissioner Porter, I think the way that I'd like to answer, and Todd, please, is that from a building plan review process, it's just the review of that building against the applicable building code standards. There's no additional or otherwise limited review from a building plan perspective that exists within the Oregon Homes program. That review is just the review that local governments do for building plan review that they do on other developments.
Okay.
From a building plan perspective, from a land use perspective, it is different, but from a building plan review perspective, it's the same.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Becky, do you want to go ahead and continue, and then we're going to come back to questions again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lazo. All right, so switching to the draft rules. First covering 2138 middle housing, so getting away from Oregon Homes for a second. First change here is the term family to unit when referring to residential units. Also updating the applicability of middle housing requirements to include urban unincorporated lands within counties. Updating the definitions for duplex, triplex, quadplex, so that large cities must allow detached or attached plexes, and also updating the definition of zone for residential use. Also part of phase one, because I'll just mention 2138, that rulemaking has been broken up into 2 phases. So this isn't everything within the bill, but we're addressing just these portions of it. So the definition of cottage cluster, while 2138 provides the update to the definition, the refinement through rule is particularly on the element of small footprint there on the slide, 2C, and then large A and large B. All right, back to Oregon Homes now. This would create a new division 47 in chapter 660. And what has been proposed for draft rules are these sections: purpose, definitions, local government review process, design standards, siting standards, and tree standards. The purpose establishes the program that local governments will approve specific residential types on lots meeting the specific criteria. And that specific criteria for the lots and for the buildings are within the definition section. So that's a very key place to look for the operationalization of the program. And this section also defines all the unique terms within the division. The local government review process intends to make clear the role and limitations on local governments within the Oregon Homes program. Also covers how the Oregon Homes development proposal can be reviewed. So in addition to the criteria listed in this division, a local government is expressly allowed to review for and apply the standards around public utilities, final engineering plans, and traffic impact analysis. The design standards being proposed include entry orientation to the street, placement of garages and driveways, and the placement of waste storage facilities. Siting standards include setback requirements, as Ethan mentioned, meeting the minimum density of the zoned area of wherever that lot or parcel may be, and that the Oregon Homes structure provides an outdoor area. Both of these allow 10% automatic variance for select standards within these sections. So there's no justification letter required from a builder developer, just simply allowed if that's the request in the application. And both have used components of OER 660 Middle Housing Model Code in an attempt to provide consistency across various statewide housing standards. And lastly, tree standards. These are not recommending rules outside of what is required by a 2258, except for offering a fee in lieu option if there were to be a situation that a tree would need to be removed. Moving into outreach and engagement, first covering our RAC, our Rulemaking Advisory Committee. First, I'll just note that while these are 3 bullets on the slide, our discussion spanned many more topics, but these are just highlights that occurred in several meetings. So these are no way exhaustive, but this is what we're highlighting here today. So around siting and design standards, members expressed that these standards need to be as clear and objective as possible. There's a discussion of whether statewide standards would be workable given the need and the built environment of local governments across Oregon vary so differently. Members proposed scaling standards by the local government population side, but it was ultimately decided that the standard should be kept at a statewide standard across the board to align with the legislative intent of the bill. Local governments were concerned if the Oregon Homes Program limits development review to only using Oregon Homes criteria, how would life and safety concerns like fire access be addressed? And that is why local governments are expressly allowed and retain the ability to review an Oregon Homes development against their public facilities, final engineering, and traffic impact analysis to address these important community concerns. And last, programmatic interpretation. The initial understanding around the local government plan review, there was confusion and how that would be operationalized, but statute and proposed rule can be administered through existing land use and building plan review processes, albeit with a more limited scope of review potentially. I'll also cover the local officials advisory committee. DLCD staff presented on July 21st. We heard from local governments similar, highlighting just some of the larger themes. So a similar question around local government role and how local governments would operationalize the Oregon Homes program. There's also a question very similar on having statewide standards given the different needs and challenges in more rural parts of the state. And that last bullet there was a conversation around a need for more state funding for comprehensive planning and housing overall. And then covering key dates, today is the public hearing. Our public comment period does close on August 2nd. And then August 13th is the expected final rule publication date. And then August 27th will be the LCDC adoption hearing. And with that, I hand it over to you, Chair Lazo. That is the end of our presentation.
Great. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Ethan, Todd, and Alana. Commissioners, I know we had a very robust discussion in the middle part of that, and I really appreciated that. We could also continue that discussion here. One thing I do want to note, going real quick, Becky, on your key dates, is the public comment closing on August 2nd or August 3rd? I thought it might have been the 3rd.
Sure, it should be the 2nd, 11:59 on Sunday.
All right. I'm not sure I got the 3rd, but okay, great. Thank you.
So
all right,
we can
Commissioner Bennett.
hit the ground running on the 3rd and incorporating those comments.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. As the liaison, I was interested in your comments. I've had feedback from a number of planners, local government folks, that they felt that actually a number of them felt that this was really an unworkable option. I'll leave it at that. And so I was wondering, being our representative at the RAC, your takeaway and your observations there, because I think all of us, I know all of us are concerned about the housing issue, and we want it, but we also want a tool that works for our local government partners, or else we'll be sitting here in a year going, well, we adopted all these rules, but we still don't have any houses, or we have, as we've seen lately, the tidal wave of local government, local residents' concerns, such as on data centers, that's gone out of control. And so I would like to see, when we're done, something that local government can implement, developers can work with, and that we end up with more housing. So that may be a major ask, but your observation, Chair, and then thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. I'll say this, I think today is a good opportunity for us to do information gathering and listening to folks that are going to come before us. And so I'll also hold my comments kind of to that until we get, I don't want to deliberate too far along, but I think what I'll characterize it, it's, I think it's an interesting role for our staff members to try to capture in 3 bullets so much discussion that happened over time, right? It really doesn't fully capture the discussion you have, and particularly what you are capturing, Commissioner Bennett. I think this sense from our local partners that, and I don't know that I would use that, to me, I don't know if I would frame it as unworkable. I think that local governments felt like it wasn't something that would fully fit what was happening in their local communities, right? Whether or not they could implement it is different than does it actually fit with what they want to do in their communities? And so that was part of the discussion. It was, is the state bringing something that we can't implement, or is it something that we just don't want to? So that's, to me, there's a difference there. And in some cases, it was things that that local folks felt like, look, this is just going to cause a problem, right? An example for me, in some cases, was setbacks, right? If we prescribe setbacks, what if we need a 10-foot setback for utilities or blah, blah, blah? Well, that's covered in public facilities, right? So there's a lot of those kinds of discussions that continue to come up every time we open up something like this. So yeah, I think in all 3 of those bullets there under the RAC discussions, the siting and design standards, the local government review, and the programmatic interpretation, they were wide-ranging conversations that had really dichotomous sides to it. And I think, to staff's credit, they have captured and moved the program forward, true to the intent of the bill. And I think that's what we find before us. But that's not to say that those opinions of folks and those beliefs don't exist from members of the RAC and all those interested parties. So that's the report from the RAC. Again, I think it's really hard to capture how much discussion there was on these 3 elements in that process. And I think we're going to hear some of it today and have seen it if you've looked at the written comments that come in, certainly are along those lines that were the discussions in the RAC. Is that helpful for you, Commissioner Bennett? Good. All right. Thank you. Commissioner Condor.
Okay, I'm curious if there's been any consideration about, I think what's good is trying to streamline and create housing. And I appreciate that. Having used like the City of Portland's community design standards is very effective. So where you have a jurisdiction that will have a design overlay, you can forego going through design review by using community design standards. They have a residential tract and they have a commercial tract, and it's very effective and it's very prescriptive, and you can't really go outside of that prescriptive nature without completely ruining the whole process. So you really have to stick to that prescriptive nature. I guess my question is, have you all thought about giving the option for jurisdictions to adopt or continue to use their community design standards in place of this state component? Because some places already have this and it's a well-oiled machine, and I would hate to see something that was so, I'm not going to say it is like the best thing in the world, but I do think it's workable. I've used it on the residential side and the commercial side in the City of Portland very effectively, and still have attractive buildings that operate really well, and didn't have to go through design review, which can be lengthy and costly. But have you considered of giving that pathway of saying, to the cities, okay, if you don't want to use these state mandates because you have kind of a very unique environment, you still have to have a prescriptive pathway with a right to build, because that's the state mandate. We want to produce housing, but you can produce something, and here are the kind of the box that you have to be within, so they don't have, too many things, right? Because my concern is, if you don't give this option, they will find ways to make things difficult, whether it's through infrastructure or the traffic impact study. So giving them some leeway may produce, I like incentive-based programs. So if there's an idea around that.
Commissioner Condor and Ethan, I think before you answer that, if we could, I think I want to hold that kind of question until the end. We're going to come back with discussion after the public testimony. And so those kind of what if questions, let's say for our discussion before we get too far afield on moving that kind of towards deliberation about how we implement this piece. So if we could hold the clarifying questions at this time, we'll come back after public testimony, because public testimony might spur even more of that kind of discussion and thinking. So if it would be okay if we could hold that, Commissioner. Thank you, because I'm going to appreciate that conversation. Commissioner Porter. Oh, you're good on your question too?
Sorry, I just hit the wrong button there. It must be me, not technical. It must be operator difficulties this morning. So thank you for your patience.
I did the same thing. It's because of the panelist mode is a little bit different, because the button itself is not the reactions button. It's the raise hand button. So once you hit it, it raises your hand rather than the reaction button where you hit it and then you choose raise hand. So I think that's
sorry. No, I must be distracted or something this morning. So thank you. A question about the key dates. So I also have heard concerns from local planners about this. A lot of just some uncertainty, uncomfortableness. If the key dates that we have, we're looking for adoption in August. But worst case scenario, if we need the time, doesn't the statute provide adoption as late as January? Wasn't that the anticipated adoption date initially?
Yeah, Chair Lazo and Commissioner Porter, I can answer that question. So House Bill 2258 does prescribe a deadline by which the Commission must adopt rules for implementing the program. That deadline is January 1st, 2027. However, given the need for these kind of interventions in the housing development space, it was important to get rules in front of the Commission as quickly as we could so that the program could run.
Great. Thank you, Ethan. All right. Are there any either specific clarifying questions about where we are or what the elements are? I want to go ahead and move us to public comment, or the public testimony period. We have 10 people signed up right now. Denise, has that changed from the list you sent me? We have 11 people.
That has not changed to the 11 people that I have sent you.
Thank you.
The very first person, Melanie Keebler with the City of Bend, has requested to go later.
Okay.
So I'm going to move her towards the end, but I'm going to promote them to panelists now.
Okay.
It will take just a couple seconds.
All right, we will move into public testimony. We have, as I said, 11 folks signed up, so everybody will have 3 minutes each to testify. Folks, if commissioners have questions of these presenters after their time is done, then that won't take up their time. But we also, it's a 9:13 right now, so let's go ahead and proceed through public testimony, and then if we need to take a break after that, we'll take a break before we close out with commission discussion and final words from staff. So welcome, Mayor O'Neill from Wilsonville. You have 3 minutes to provide your testimony. And thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Lazo, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Sean O'Neill, and I'm the mayor of Wilsonville. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. There are a number of issues with the proposed Oregon home rules as currently written. Cities cannot live in a theoretical world. Our codes must consider and apply to a range of conditions. For example, these rules propose a setback of 5 feet from the property line. That does not account for sidewalks, utility easements, side slopes requiring retaining walls, or other conditions. Additionally, the garage setback distance does not accommodate larger vehicles like pickup trucks. Statewide mandates and uniform rules do not work for the diversity of communities we have in Oregon. Wilsonville has been and will continue to continue to play our part in building homes for Oregonians. But these rules are impractical to implement, contradictory to other codes, have already consumed extensive staff time that could otherwise be used for reviewing housing plans and actually building more housing. When you increase staff time, it also increases our expenditures on our budgets, especially our general fund. We support the technical changes proposed in the League of Oregon Cities comment letter, and I encourage you to adopt the recommendations. Thank you for your consideration.
Great. Thank you, Mayor O'Neill. Appreciate you being here. Any questions from Commission? The Mayor? Appreciate it. And I think I heard you say that what you are recommending is the changes that are proposed in the League of Cities written comments.
That is correct, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Let me get back to my list. Okay, next on the list is Mayor Johnson from the City of Albany. Mayor, welcome, and you'll have 3 minutes for your testimony this morning.
He may not be with us at the moment. You can skip him and we'll come back to him.
All right, we'll come back. All right, so we'll move into the next three that will be for public testimony on our list will be Diego Diaz, Derek Payne, and then Matt Straight. So Diego, if you are available online, you are our next presenter. Oh, I see Mayor Johnson, Denise.
I promoted him over, but he's not quite here yet.
Oh.
I'm here.
Oh, he is here. Okay.
Yes. Shall I go ahead and go?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Chair Lasso, members of the Commission, for the opportunity to testify for the record. My name is Alex Johnson II, Mayor of the City of Albany, Oregon. The Oregon Homes rules are currently written, cannot and should not be implemented. Oregon's strength lies in the diversity of communities, from small rural towns to large urban centers. That diversity presents real challenges, and is not possible to design a single statewide program that works for all communities. Before highlighting the new specific rural issues, its proposed rulemaking, I want to emphasize how those details illustrate much larger structural problems with one-size-fits-all approach. A 5-foot universal setback standard fails to account for the major differences in local conditions, including infrastructure constraints, absence of sidewalks, existing franchise utility easements, and most importantly, for each city's fundamentally unique community character. This is an inherent conflict between the draft rules and the legislation essentially uses may, while the rules interpret may as shall. This contradicts legislative intent and would be communicated to cities during the legislative process. The legislation gives LCDC the option to determine whether all sitting standards should be regulated. That option is not provided through this rulemaking. A statewide shall mandate cannot work given the variation in infrastructure, public utilities, and the unique character of the communities. Regarding the rulemaking advisory committee process in general, the League of Oregon Cities and cities like Albany participate in nearly every DLCD rulemaking advisory committee. From the experience of our city staff, we are in fact subject matter experts, and the RAC process needs improvement. We as jurisdictions dedicate substantial time and resources and meaningful engage with the RACs. Despite this, draft rules have not changed in response to the feedback. In many cases, our input has been dismissed or rejected outright. DLCD's RAC structure should be reworked to present the draft framework that reflects from practitioners, cities, and developers by incorporating their feedback directly into revisions. Create a separate community engagement events, accessible venues for committee members to provide feedback without needing to navigate highly technical discussions. Oregon cities want to achieve housing goals, but for that to happen, we need rules to respect the diversity of our communities, reflect legislative intent, and shape through collaborative process that values the expertise of local practitioners. Again, thank you for your opportunity to present today, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Appreciate you being here this morning. Any questions for Mayor Johnson or commissioners? Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate your testimony this morning.
I would like to extend an invitation to this commission to show you what's going on in Albany. We're doing a lot of great things here. We're building every housing type.
Thank you. I think we have visited Albany in the last couple of years. It might have been prior, but yes, thank you. A fabulous community out there. Thank you so much. All right. I see Mayor Kabler. Is this when you wanted to go, or did you want to go even later?
I just needed some time to get here. I was dropping my kid off at camp this morning, so whenever you want to call me is fine.
If you're ready, then let's have you. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to give comment today. So City of Bend submitted some written comments that I hope you'll review as well, and I'm just going to supplement those with some verbal comments today. We join with a lot of our city colleagues in having some frustration around how these rules go outside of the legislative intent in a couple of places, and we've identified that. But really the bigger picture here that I wanted to highlight for this commission to think about, stepping back, is how we are hoping to tackle the housing crisis and the many, many policy changes and rulemakings we've been through. And just considering that rulemaking and regulation are really not fundamentally how we're going to solve this problem. So when we are in a process where we are setting up rules for a new, pre-approved plan process that we hope some builders will use, I really want to emphasize keeping these simple, straightforward, and the least regulations and restrictions possible is the way to make this actually function. And in many places, these rules are prescriptive and restrictive in a way that is more restrictive than the way Bend is doing things right now, and will slow down our process. One example is adding a land use decision into a process where we right now have our own master approved permit plan. We don't have land use review as part of that, because that is an opportunity for cost and time to be put into the process, for discretion to enter into the process, and that's what slows housing down. So that's just one example. Another example is around things like the tree codes, which I know came straight from the bill. That's likely to make our tree code more restrictive than it is right now, right? So wherever there are opportunities to simplify this and to take the prescription out and to allow less restrictive means to win the day that cities are doing, I really encourage you to think about that. If this is too narrow, we're not going to see builders use it. And some of the dialogue I was listening to earlier while I was in my car making my kid listen to a DLCD hearing on the way to camp was around, how are builders going to use this practically? Because I will tell you, and I'm going to say it every chance I get, the number one thing that we're running into here is we're working on process, we're working on permitting, but the cost of infrastructure that comes along with housing, which these rules don't touch, is a huge barrier that still exists. So we can streamline these rules all we want. We can make pre-approved plans, which are great. We have our own ADU pre-approved plans. But if we're not also addressing some of those fundamental things underpinning the housing market, this isn't going to make that big of an impact. But since we're here for these rules, as much as you can look at making these streamlined and simple, take a look at our comments on the places we think these are actually going to slow things down, and try to avoid that, so that for cities like us and others that are really doing the best we can to build as much housing as possible, we're not running into a step backwards here with these rules. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I think it is also important to note that folks, that lots of the folks who are testifying have provided have written public testimony also that provides a lot of detail about the recommendations. So really appreciate that. So we definitely do read those and take those into account. So appreciate that. Mayor, thank you for being here. Commissioners, any questions for Mayor Keebler? All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here and the work that you all are doing out in Bend. All right, so that does get us to that next set of folks for public testimony that I read. So Diego Diaz, Derek Payne, and then Matt Straight. So Diego, are you able to testify? I don't see Diego on there. I don't see any of those. Did I see Derek? I thought I saw Derek maybe. Yeah, oh, there's Derek right there. Yeah, why don't we go ahead and go to Derek, and I'll have to come back to Diego. So Derek, please proceed.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Chair Lazo and Commission. Thank you for your time today. So I'm testifying in opposition to the proposed rules that are before you this morning. My name is Derek Payne. I'm the Community Development Director for Jefferson County. I'm a certified planner. I'm a certified residential inspector and plans reviewer. The viewpoints expressed this morning are representative of the commissioners of Jefferson County and myself as a professional planner in the state of Oregon. House Bill 2258 outlines exactly the criteria and standards that should be addressed by this RAC. And it has been expressed by others this morning. The proposed rules exceed that authority and act as a rejection of community standards, processes, and comprehensive plans, as well as the associated zoning ordinances that implement those comprehensive plans. The strength and beauty of Oregon is within the diversity that is brought about by the ability to make local decisions on how land is developed. And I propose that the rules that are in excess of what is specifically required by House Bill 2258 be rejected, and all future rulemaking directed by this bill be focused on what the legislation specifically calls for. And I'm going to be pretty brief this morning, so I'd like to leave you with this from the AICP Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. People who participate in the planning process shall continuously pursue and faithfully serve the public interest. Circumventing the rules that a community has seen fit to adopt does not do that. We urge you the rejection of extracurricular rulemaking on this topic. Thank you for your time this morning.
Great. Thank you, Derek. Appreciate you being here, and particularly in light of the circumstances around so many wildfires on that side of the state, that we certainly are all thinking about you folks and wishing you the best. So thank you for being here. Any questions for Derek from commissioners? Great. Thank you, Derek. Appreciate it. All right. Next is, I did see Matt. Straight there you are, Matt. All right, Matt, you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Laszlo, fellow commissioners. Matt Straight presenting from Millersburg. First, I really want to echo that we support all the comments that have been made so far. We agree with Albany's Mayor Johnson that the rules don't seem to be changing based on the input that the cities are providing. Also, definitely want to agree with Mayor Keebler. And that's really the one point I wanted to talk about. We submitted a letter with a lot of points that really do make these unworkable in our local jurisdictions. So I just wanted to zero in on one of them that we thought was the perhaps the most difficult to work with. And that is 660-4720, number 1. A local government must issue a land use decision on an Oregon's homes. We don't issue land use decisions on homes. They bypass land use, go straight to building permit. I think this is trying to fix something that isn't broken. The housing process is very fast here in Millersburg. Doing this is going to force us to interject a land use decision where there wasn't one before. And land use decisions really, really slow things down. And so that is just one example in these rules where it's going to make it far more difficult and far slower to implement an Oregon home based on these rules in our city.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you being here. And actually, I did want to clarify something on this. I did sit in the RAC meetings, and I think was there a discussion, Ethan, about that land use piece? That is that the piece that was in the legislation that may not prescribe a land use decision as we tend to use it in land use processes? Was that the discussion?
Eliza, the text there comes from House Bill 2258. It specifies, or the language is that local government shall issue a land use decision approving, the rest of that provision within the statute.
Thank you. So yeah, that came from the bill, and again, maybe some question as to what that means, whether it's a formal land use process as we tend to think of it in the land use world, or nomenclature that is generally used to mean how we use land by the legislature. So appreciate that. Thank you, Matt. And we'll look at all the comments that you all have submitted also. All right, next is Patty Mulvihill. I see you there, Patty, from the League of Oregon Cities. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Lazo and members of the commission. For the record, my name is Patty Mulvihill, and I'm the director of the League of Oregon Cities. The League represents 241 cities in Oregon. I and many of the city and county representatives you've already heard from are here today because while we share the legislature's vision for expanding housing in this state, we remain deeply concerned that the draft Oregon Homes Rule, particularly as they are currently written, are not going to achieve their intended impact. The League and its member cities are the boots on the ground partners. We're here to work with you and advocate for workable, practical rules that serve local governments, home builders, and ultimately the Oregonians who actually need these homes. But in an effort to force rigid statewide organization standards, these proposed rules ignore geographic and operational realities within our state. By creating a level of inflexibility, these rules actually create provisions that don't go with what the statute itself requires. Let's take setbacks as an example, and I think some of you have already mentioned this. While a 5-foot setback requirement might look functional on paper, the physical reality in most of our communities demands at least 10 feet. That's to accommodate fire access, subsurface utilities, and planned sidewalks. So imposing a rigid 5-foot standard creates a double liability for communities and for home builders. First, it fosters unrealistic expectations for home builders. And then second, it's going to trigger long-term safety and livability consequences. So for the false expectations piece, when home builders arrive at our planning counters across this state, they're going to expect a streamlined 5-foot approval, but they will instead encounter immediate friction, mandatory redesign, and costly project delays the moment real-world infrastructure constraints come into play. And Chair Lazo, at one point today, you talked about the difference between cities just not wanting to do something versus cities being functionally unable to meet a requirement. This is an example of something we are functionally unable to achieve with these rules. The second problem, we're disregarding spatial necessities to maximize theoretical density that's not going to solve the state's housing crisis. We're simply trading one challenge for another. By requiring these types of setback standards, you're compromising emergency response capabilities, you're inflating already skyrocketing infrastructure costs, and you're degrading community livability. To bridge the gap, the League has submitted a detailed red line version of the rules with our formal comment letter. Our proposed revisions to the draft rules provide a practical, real-world approach that respects local infrastructure and actually will get homes built faster without creating unnecessary regulatory friction. With that, we urge you to read our rules and not adopt what's before you.
Great. Thank you, Patty. Appreciate you all being here and the work that the League has done. Any questions for Patty from commissioners? Patty, I did have one. I just want to clarify what you were talking about with regard to the setbacks. So the pieces that you brought up around fire and public infrastructure would be addressed in the public facilities plan, I think, right? And so are you saying that again, I think what I heard about the expectation with regard to the 5-foot setbacks is a process piece, right? Somebody will come into the counter with their Oregon Homes plan thinking that they're going to get a 5-foot setback, but the public facilities plan would say, no, this actually needs to be a different setback. Is that what you're saying? It's just the process would actually be more complicated than it appears to be?
Yeah, so take, for example, let's take, and I think Mayor Keebler alluded to this in her testimony, right? We have identified at the local level, whether it's counties or cities, what the setback needs to be in order for utilities to actually work, in order for fire access to occur. So if I'm a developer and I'm looking at my code or I'm looking at what these rules are going to require, I'm going to come in thinking it's 5 feet. But in practical terms, it can't be 5 feet in most communities. It's going to have to be something larger. So what that means is, as a developer, I may have created an entire plan based on false information that's not practical. So what that does is it basically negates the pre-planning the developers have done. And it's going to create tension between the developers and the local governments because they're going to say, well, why didn't I know this? So what we're saying is don't mandate a statewide setback standard that you already know from the beginning is not going to be workable in every community. And you've had multiple planners and some mayors who have said, this isn't going to work. It's not us being difficult. It's not because we don't want homes. We're telling you the way we have currently designed our communities, we need more setback space if you want those houses to have sewer, water, stormwater, or you want fire apparatus that's actually designed to prevent and respond to fires to be able to access the homes that we're building.
Great. Thank you. So it's kind of a process question, right? Because the public facilities plan piece and fire safety would come after the completeness review, or so it just would.
You're, in the effort to streamline the process, you're actually delaying the process.
Okay. Right. All right, appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Chair, you're muted.
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry. Eric, I see you there. So you're up next if you are ready to provide your testimony. Thank you.
I am. Thank you, Chair Lazo. As always, want to start by thanking DLCD staff, Becky and Ethan, for their hard work on this and the commission for their time. My name is Eric Rutledge. I'm the Community Development Director at the City of Sherwood. I was on the Rulemaking Advisory Committee. Just really quickly, Chair Lazo, to address, elaborate on the fire safety concern. Even if cities can review for public facility standards, there are still on-site fire access standards that these rules would not allow a city or the local fire department to review against. So, for example, the state fire code says fire access roads need to be within 150 feet of all portions of a building. Under these rules, you could have a 200-foot deep lot, and right away you're not meeting that standard because the building is 200 feet away and the road is needs to be no more than 150 feet away. So just another example to elaborate on that. I wanted to touch on two other points. First, poor development outcomes. I think Oregon really prides itself on not having a land use system that creates these monotonous suburbs, that we've seen in other places of the country through the 1950s and 1990s. And to the discussion earlier, a developer could do a land division and create 5,000 square foot lots that are relatively flat. So you could have a 100 to 200 lot subdivision that qualifies for this program. The developer has one, this would be an extreme example, but one approved home, and they put that home on every single lot or a majority of them. Really poor outcome. A lot of local jurisdictions have home variety standards. So if you do a new subdivision, we say, sure, you can put your sort of standard home on there that you have as a developer, but you got to have a minimum of 5 different homes and you got to break up the monotony. And these standards would allow a developer to supersede those home variety standards. The other comment I wanted to make was around that local plan review. What we heard a lot during the legislative process and during the rulemaking was, hey, I go to the local jurisdiction for building plan review, and your building official says this gives us 20 comments and says it doesn't meet code, when the other building official in this other jurisdiction does. And so that third pathway, that third option, a local plan review, really doesn't address that main issue that we kept hearing of, hey, we just need one plan reviewer, that's the state, and then we come into your local government. By allowing that third pathway, you now have 200 plus building officials reviewing for plan review. You can't guarantee that they're all actually going to approve that plan based on building code, and it's up to the local building official to determine compliance. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate you being here this morning and for participating in the RAC. Any questions for Eric and his testimony this morning? Great. Thank you. All right. Next up. Sorry. So next up is Morgan Tracy from the City of Portland. I see you there, Morgan, if you're ready for your testimony.
Great. Can you hear me? Fantastic. All right. Good morning, Chair Lazo, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Morgan Tracy. I'm a senior planner in the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I represent the City of Portland on the Oregon Homes Rulemaking Advisory Committee. Portland is supportive of and appreciates the state and DLCD efforts to streamline production of needed housing. We have a vested and shared interest in ensuring the rules as drafted are effective at achieving positive and equitable housing outcomes for all Oregonians and that they work as intended. My role in the Bureau is to translate policy aspirations and guidance into tangible, implementable, and defensible rules. I managed the project that introduced middle housing to the City of Portland prior to the state's passage of House Bill 2001. The residential infill project added 1,400 middle housing units to our single dwelling zones in its first 3 years, with home prices about $250,000 to $300,000 less than the large single houses that prior zoning allowed. What makes RIP stand out as a model for cities across the country is the floor area limit on unit sizes that disincentivize large single-family homes while encouraging smaller and less expensive middle housing options. These rules, as drafted, threaten to upend the successful strategy by creating virtually limitless entitlements and circumvention of basic zoning rules like height limits, building coverage, setbacks, and for Portland, unit size limits. The rules limit developable area, but as defined, this only speaks to the area of the lot that is outside of building setbacks, not the size of the building itself. The notable absence of height limits for building coverage simply enables massive homes. Additionally, the rules include several legally dubious proposals. The rules exceed rulemaking authority by adding back lots and parcels constrained by natural resources and hazards that the authorizing statute expressly excluded. The rules are in direct conflict with existing state statute by creating a land use procedure that does not meet the very definition of a land use decision. The rules also improperly delegate a state program assigned to the Building Codes Division to local jurisdictional building code review that was not authorized by the legislature. The Commission's materials suggests in the presentation that the rules apply to less than 0.5% of lots in a large city, but this analysis excludes any lot with an existing house. But all that is needed to redevelop those lots, even within the 5-year demo window, is a proposal for a second unit, such as a house with an ADU or a duplex. It is also not clear whether this analysis included or excluded lots with natural resources and hazard constraints, since the rules as proposed improperly allow those lots to be eligible. From our analysis, which looked at residential lots between 1,500 and 20,000 square feet outside those constrained areas, we found that 47% of lots in Portland are potentially eligible, which is about 100,000 lots citywide. This disparity is very important to highlight because, as noted, there are a number of policy, legal, and technical issues as we elaborate on in our written testimony. Should the state or this commission later find that additional limitations are necessary to achieve the policy aim of more equitable housing, these changes would trigger a statewide Measure 56 notice with significant cost in the millions of dollars and thousands of hours of staffing impacting every jurisdiction in the state. Fortunately, there's a path forward, and we and others have included a number of specific suggestions in our written testimony to get us there. We urge the Commission to consider these changes and take the time needed to get these rules right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Morgan. Appreciate you being here and for participating in the RAC, and really appreciate the perspectives from the City of Portland and the work that you all are doing there. Any questions for Morgan from the Commission? Great. Thank you so much, Morgan. All right. Next up, I saw Rachel Marble from the City of Hillsborough. Rachel, are you? There you are. All right, Rachel, why don't you go ahead?
Good morning, Chair Lazo and Commissioners. My name is Rachel Marble, and I'm the Code and Policy Project Manager for Community Development in the City of Hillsborough. You'll hear a lot of technical comments on the rules in both written and verbal testimony that must be addressed, but I want to focus our comments on two things. First, these rules do not align with the language of House Bill 2258 by expanding the program beyond state-approved building plans. And second, these rules do not need to be adopted now ahead of the rest of the middle housing rulemaking. House Bill 2258 clearly states the Commission may adopt rules requiring local jurisdictions to approve specified residential types on certain lots or parcels under specified conditions. The bill further states that it applies to housing types whose building plans have been approved under Section 5 of the bill. Section 5 of the bill includes only two distinct paths by which an applicant can receive approval for the housing discussed in the bill. Neither of these paths includes approval of plans by a local jurisdiction only. During legislative session and in a presentation on the bill to House Committee on Housing and Homelessness by the Senior Housing Policy Advisor from the Governor's Office, the intent of the legislation being limited to state-approved plans was made clear. The presentation included the following language. What is Oregon Homes? A statewide pre-approved building and land use program that would provide a series of building plans for single units, plexes, townhomes, cottage clusters, and apartments 12 units or less developed by the Building Code Division. Developers and housing providers may also submit plans to BCD for review and approval as a part of the existing master plan program. Again, the purpose of the program was focused on state-approved building plans, and there's no mention of plans approved at the local level. If the purpose of this program is to reduce permitting time at the local level and standardize processes for developers across the state, then how does adding a plan review option at the local level, which applies only to a single site, do that? Adding a third additional path which shifts approval of plans from the state to local jurisdictions does not serve to clarify state planning law, nor does it interpret a statewide planning statute, goal, or rule. This was not anticipated by the bill, and it's not consistent with the intent of the program as created by the legislature. As for the timing of the rulemaking and adoption of the first portion of the rules now, I would urge the Commission to consider delaying adoption of the rules until the second half of the More Homes rulemaking concludes. While rulemaking for House Bill 2258 and House Bill 2138 were not tied together in legislation, the rulemaking process for these two bills was merged into one with two phases as the topics overlap. However, for that very reason, the rules should be considered holistically as one package in December. This will allow additional time for technical refinement of the Phase 1 rules and consideration where there is overlap between the two bills. Lastly, reading from House Bill 2258, LCDC may adopt rules requiring local governments to issue a land use decision. It's not a shall, it's a may. Thank you for your time and consideration of our comments.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Appreciate you testifying and bringing your perspective this morning. Commissioners, any questions for Rachel? All right, thank you so much for being here. Brandon, I think that's Brandon Persinger from AOC. There's Brandon. Okay, why don't you go ahead, Brandon? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair Lazo, members of the Land Conservation and Development Commission. My name is Brandon Persinger, and I am the Legislative Affairs Manager for the Association of Oregon Counties, covering natural resources and land use related issues. For those of you who don't know, the Association of Oregon Counties is a nonpartisan member organization that advocates on issues that unite all county governing bodies and have an impact on county functions, governance, budgets, and services. AOC appreciates the opportunity to participate in the rulemaking process and provide comments today about our ongoing concerns with the draft Oregon Homes rules. I'm here today to request the members of LCDC in your preparations for potential adoption later in August of the Oregon Homes Division 47 rules to revise the proposed rules being presented today. AOC's request is for LCDC to review the materials submitted by the local government practitioners via both the written record as well as verbally this morning. We request members watch the recording from the last Rules Advisory Committee meeting on July 9th, where every member of the RAC had the opportunity to flag areas of concern in the proposed rules. We would encourage LCDC to make changes to the proposed rules to address those issues being raised by the local practitioners to allow the program to be implemented as intended. Counties across the state look forward to implementing programs passed by the legislature to increase housing availability in this time of need. We simply request LCDC alter the proposed rules to ensure we are able to do just that. Thank you for your time this morning.
Great, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate you being here and for participating in the RAC and for bringing forward the recommendation that folks watch the last RAC meeting. I wouldn't have made that recommendation, but I'm glad somebody did because those are highly valuable, and you can also watch them on the YouTube channel and watch them at like 1.5 or 2 times the speed and hear the little mouse voices, but you can still understand and get the gist. Like I said, I gave you a summary of what happened there overall, but it is worth listening to those. If you do have that opportunity, you can get through it in about an hour. So thanks, Brandon, for being here. Any questions for Brandon from commissioners? And I know that you all have provided written testimony also. Great, thank you. All right, thanks, Brandon. That's the last person on the list. We'll circle back. I still don't see Diego Diaz connected. So Diego, if you're out there, we're happy to hear from you. Otherwise, we're gonna move on.
Chair Lazo.
Yeah.
He has not joined us, and he's not responded to my attempt to reach out to him. But I did want to note for you that I have uploaded 4 more pieces of written testimony that came in this meeting.
Fantastic. So commissioners, go to the website and you can download those. And remember again that we'll also have a final packet of public testimony that comes in. The public testimony period is open until August 2nd. So after that date, we'll have a chance to look at all the final public testimony pieces that have come in. All right, with that, we'll close the public testimony and move on to the discussion, and we'll go right to Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everyone that testified and also submitted written testimony. I guess really what seems to me in looking at my notes here is that using one of the folks' statement that this exceeds the legislative intent. And I guess this is a question for staff, and it's a large question. What would the proposal look like if we limited to only the legislative intent versus it seems to be a common theme that I've heard is that this proposal exceeds the legislative intent. And so with that, I guess that's part one, Chair. And the second part is that I would like to encourage, and if we had to move the August meeting, I know this is almost blasphemy to even mention that, but where staff goes back and works with our partners, we continually refer to local government as our partners, but if they have such large concerns that's raised from large cities to small cities to counties where that we need to get this workable. And as I said earlier, I know everyone in LCDC and the department wants to see more houses, but we also need everyone to be as close as possible working as a team. And if there's the concerns that the league brought forward and then echoed by AOC, which generally doesn't get involved into housing to this discussion, it becomes concerning to me. So I guess the two parts is number one, what would the proposal look like if we carved out those parts that weren't legislative directed, I guess the Mays of the world? And then second of all, is it possible for the staff to get together and hammer out something, I guess under your leadership, Chair, of hammer out something so that we can move forward and not be into this situation which may lead us into litigation versus house building. That's my concern. So I guess I'm not even sure if it was a question or an observation.
Thanks, Commissioner. How about if we go to Memorial? Director Bateman.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Brenda Bateman, Director of the Department of Land Conservation and Development here in the conference room. And I would invite our attorney, Steve Shipsey, to also jump in should I say anything untoward or uncomfortable. But in response to Commissioner Bennett's request, we certainly can take another look at the parameters, the sidelines, and if we see that there's some room for flexibility or a different approach, we can certainly come back in August with some things that are responsive to the question that you just posed.
Thank you, Director. Great. Commissioner Warren.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to support Commissioner Bennett's approach. I think that these rules could use some more time, and I'm uncomfortable coming back in August with the potential to adopt these rules. I'd also encourage us to consider if we should extend the public comment period. It does close here pretty soon, and I know a number of cities who are just now becoming aware of this rulemaking. I've had personal conversations with them over the last week, and they are actively preparing testimony right now to get into us during their busy time of year where they're actively trying to implement the other rules we required them to do. So I would just put it out there for consideration that we extend the public comment period to at least August, if not later.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I don't know what the logistics of that would entail. And does it? I think the part of the timing is so that because we're working towards that August LCDC meeting to have rules ready for adoption. That's why we close the public comment period, kind of working back from that point, is my sense. Is that right?
Chair.
Oops, was that the conference room?
It was.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Director Bateman again here for folks. You're correct that dates that are set forth were definitely with an eye to an August adoption, which is quite important, but we also hear you. So what I would say is I would not want to make any commitments today in the moment. But I think this requires a conversation with the governor's office, the chair of the commission, and senior staff to see what kind of flexibilities we might have with the overall calendar. I appreciate the request, and it's worth taking a look at.
Thank you, Director. Commissioner Porter.
Chair. Yeah, I want to kind of piggyback off of Commissioner Bennett and Commissioner Warren's comments. This has been a pretty impressive set of comments that have come in. The outpouring from, so many local governments with some serious concerns. I mean, they've got some substance there for sure. And not only, the organizations that have come out and commented, but the people within those organizations that have, been tagged to be the commenters are usually in a role that, wouldn't be, hanging out with us during one of these meetings. So they've clearly rolled out, top level managers to come in and comment. And so that lends to the seriousness of which the local governments are taking this. And so I think that we might be trying to push this a little too fast. I mean, it is fairly complex. It does seem to, some of these rules do seem to contradict what the locals have in place. Seems like the potential outcome for this is going to be to create quagmires where maybe there currently aren't. So I'd hate to see us rush this just to get it rushed, and create a bigger problem, at the local levels, because as always, they're the ones that have to make their way through the trees and disentangle everything. And so, they are our partners, and I think we need to be listening to them and supporting them. So I would encourage us to kind of maybe, slow it down, let some of these other local governments come in, or whoever come in and comment, as opposed to rushing this thing through. So appreciate all of the commenters. Thank you so much for coming in today and taking your time to let us know your thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Porter. Commissioner Scar.
Thank you. Sorry, I just jumped back in, so I'm making some assumptions perhaps about where we are, but I did read the submitted written comments, and I am familiar certainly with some of the concerns of local government. And I think what I would like to share is, speaking as a county commissioner and therefore as local government in my space, as well as the comments we've seen, people really want this to work. This is an exciting opportunity to figure out how we can make this work. And I think there is understandably and reasonable concern that by pushing it this fast, we may step in something that otherwise we wouldn't have to if we gave it just a little bit more time. I understand that there is a great desire to have this done sooner rather than later, because of course we want to get going. But I appreciate the conversation to take a breath. I appreciate the conversation to ensure that we get it right. So I think that as a member of this board, that weighs heavily on me that we might not get it right because we're in a rush. So I'm hopeful we can continue to work with our local partners, because I think they have ideas and ways we can get it right. So now that we've got it on everybody's radar, to Commissioner Warren's point, let's use their information as well to get it right, because I think we can, and I think this can be game changing if done correctly.
Thank you. Appreciate that perspective, Commissioner. Commissioner Warren.
Yeah, going back to maybe some more technical questions here. So I'm really interested in this argument that's being made about the legislative intent of these rules. And then when I read through the original bill, nowhere do I see that we shall be adopting a statewide zoning code. And I think that if the legislature were really interested in creating something like that, they probably would have used those words really clearly. But that's not the way I necessarily read the bill. Unfortunately, I think the bill, and forgive me for whoever wrote this, is pretty poorly written. And so I think it leaves a lot of room for interpretation. And that's, I think, where a lot of folks are getting hung up. right now with what was the original legislative intent of this bill. And so I would love for some time, and maybe now is not the appropriate time for staff to provide some sort of response to what is the legislative intent? Is it for us to adopt a statewide zoning code? Because that's what the rules are effectively doing in my mind.
Thank you, Commissioner Warren. Yeah, Ethan, do you want to provide some
I'll give it.
response to that? And then
Yeah.
actually, I might ask council to weigh in a little bit on kind of the broader defining legislative intent. And I know that was part of Commissioner Bennett's earlier question also, and a number of testifiers have kind of brought that concept forward. So, but Ethan, go ahead. Whoops. Oh, there you are. My
Yeah.
screen keeps moving around.
Thank you, Chair. And Commissioner Warren, I guess I'll start by the operative for the purposes of this commission's consideration, the operative sections for legislative intent and the commission's authority to adopt rules implementing this program lies in Section 2, Sub 5 of the bill. It outlines those key areas by which the commission will adopt rules. And if you forgive me for just a moment, I'm going to kind of highlight those 5 things just in brief. They can be summarized as processes that the local government may apply to the development of Oregon homes, applicable design standards and the scope of design review, variances and adjustments to those particular standards, limits on land use regulations, including, and it lists a few things like minimum and maximum setbacks, parking requirements, floor area ratios, and minimum density, and standards for tree removal. Those are the standards that are authorized to the commission to adopt rules when it comes to Oregon homes developments.
Thanks, Ethan.
So it's the way I read that, yeah. Ethan, is there's a lot of mays in there, right? The commission may specify, though it's not saying the commission shall specify. So I think probably where the argument is happening around what's the legislative intent of this is, did the legislature actually want this commission to adopt a statewide zoning code? And the way that I read this is that they said we could if we wanted to. They're giving us kind of the authority to do that if this commission finds it to be appropriate for the situation we're in. And so I think that's kind of where people are getting hung up. And so I would just love staff's interpretation of that. And like I said previously, if that's not appropriate for this moment in time, I understand, and we can have that conversation offline.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Steve Chipsey, could you give us an overview, since we're throwing the term legislative intent around a whole bunch, kind of what we ought to be thinking about when we're thinking about legislative intent? I could put you on the spot.
Sure, thank you. So for the record, Steve Chipsey, Department of Justice. When we're looking at legislative intent, the reason we do that is because when we're construing statute, we're trying to effectuate what the legislature intended. So legislative intent. The best way to do that is to look at the text of what they adopted. And so that's why Ethan's pointing to House Bill 2258, Section 2.5. And that language is, that's the best reflection of legislative intent. As Commissioner Warren pointed out, occasionally it's not crystal clear. And so that's where we have to look to the context. So the rest of House Bill 2258, where 2258 will reside in the Oregon statutes, those things that are around it. So if there are words that are used in House Bill 2258 that are used elsewhere in our statutory scheme, we'll try to give those common meaning so that we don't mean one thing by backyard in one part of the rule and another thing, another meaning of backyard in a different statute kind of thing. So that's always the task. There's a methodology that the Supreme Court has adopted. It was called it was in PG versus Boley 317 or 606. It's rolls right off the tongue. I figure I'll probably have a tattoo of that after I retire. They clarified it in State versus Gaines, which was a criminal case. So, but you're looking at the text, then you're looking at the context. If there's any rules of statutory construction that help, generally undefined terms, we look to Webster's Third New International and try to give them their common meaning, unless again in land use they have a term of art. But these are just tools to help us get to some idea of what the legislature intended if it isn't clear to us. And you can always look to legislative history. It used to be that you didn't get to legislative history unless you found that the other tools weren't helpful, but now you can always look to legislative history. So those are where staff and council will look to help you guide you as to what the legislature intended. Perhaps there's more I should say, or perhaps is a good point to peter off.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. And I think the conference room has their hand up, and I'm assuming that's Director Bateman.
Actually, it's Alexis Hammer,
Hey, Alexis.
Legislative and Policy Manager here. Hi, thanks, Chair Lazo and Commissioner Warren. I would affirm obviously everything that Steve just said, but I would also point to Section 3, just below Section 2, Sub 5. That was the core of what we're discussing today. Section 3 says that LCDC shall adopt initial rules implementing Section 2 by January 1st of 2027. And I read that, I construe that to mean that although Section 2 starts with a may, it is not prescriptive about us, the LCDC, adopting every single component that is listed within Section 3 or Section 2, but that we must adopt something implementing Section 2. So doing nothing is not an option according to this legislation.
For that clarification, Alexis, that's the way I read it too, is we have to adopt something, but there's a lot of mays in what we have to adopt. So I think we do have some discretion from my understanding of what we may adopt or shall adopt, sorry.
Although it sounds like that what we shall adopt the intent is for it to actually implement what is in Section 2. Whether or not it's every element, it should implement the intention of Section 2. Right, the program.
I think that's the interpretation piece, right? Is that it's up to us to interpret what we may adopt.
The program.
We have to adopt something, right? So if we determine that it makes sense, and this is just an example, it makes sense for us to adopt land use rules that allow pre-approved plans, then that's what we may do.
Yeah, if it meets the intent of what they're trying to accomplish in Section 2, correct? Yeah, Commissioner Bennett.
As Commissioner Warren mentioned, the word may in there has certainly muddied the waters, I guess, to put it. And, which leaves me looking, after I was reading it, then relying on Alexis and Steve to try and say, when is may what they really meant, or when is may just a word that someone placed in there. And so I kind of, I realize that today we're not taking action but having said that, I would hope that we may continue this discussion and not get locked into August. I mean, I hate meetings more than anyone because I travel the farthest, but if we had to have a September meeting in order to get this right, that ought to craze horror to everyone that I can't see real clearly. But I would be open to, as Commissioner Scar said, to getting it right versus getting it. And as I mentioned earlier, the next thing you know, then we're in litigation and we still haven't built any houses. And even more, we've alienated a lot of our partners because it appears that we're just blatantly disregarding all of their testimony as has been, and all of the other work. So I'm always a believer that there's probably a balance here. And I think that the department and the commission can work with our partners and the other voices too, because I don't want to minimize, there are outside voices beyond those that need to be heard, and come up with maybe setting aside some mays that are not workable. But also, why did we land, as I'm sitting here and been listening, why did we land on 5 feet versus 10 feet or something? And not to get into that discussion, but it would seem like there is legitimacy, getting fire apparatus is humongous now, getting them down the street. There is, as a person that has in my district of LCDC, there's almost 2 million acres on fire. So there's fire issues that are necessary. But I think that to me, I know we do have to get something done, and we should get something done, and we need to be doing it. But if we need to refine it more, not disregard or discard it, but refine it, I believe that there is an opportunity here to work now that we've fleshed out. And as Commissioner Warren said, there's other cities and communities that are putting together testimony. And as I said, I've had planning directors go, Mark, this is crazy, we can't do it. And as was pointed out, funding, yes, that's one of the elements, but it isn't any dollars in any of the jurisdictions' pocket that we're recognizing it. So if we adopt all of it and then they still don't have the money, we're almost creating a quagmire of which a lot of controversy could erupt from it.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. Before I go to the other commissioners, I think I saw a lot of hands come up. I want to do 2 things. One, I want to go to council, go to Steve Shipsey. I don't know if you have something directly to respond to Commissioner Bennett's. The other thing I'll say is that we're going to have to, we're not going to be able to decide on the timing of this online. That will have to be an offline discussion that we have with many other interested parties, schedule all those pieces. I think it would be very difficult for us to schedule a separate meeting, which my sense means that would have to push into October if that was even a possibility. So that's going to have to be a bigger conversation that happens offline from here. So just want to point that out. And again, the other thing I'll say is we have a very, very large body of work in public comment with very specific recommendations that staff can take and that we can consider at this point. So I'm not sure how much more process we actually need. But let's go to Steve first, and then we'll go to the commissioners.
Yeah, just to be real short, I want to just affirm what Alexis said. You do have a requirement to adopt rules. And then in section 2.5, that's the latitude that the legislature has afforded you to the subject matter of those rules that you're required to adopt.
And for folks that if you're looking for the text of the House bill is in the packet for this item. It's page 10 of your packet if you're trying to flip around or scroll around to find it. So Commissioner Porter.
Chair, yeah, I know that we have just really inundated our local partners with all of these housing rulemakings over the last couple of years. And I know that so many of them are still trying to get their arms around those. Then to add this other program on top that's potentially workable. Can someone refresh my memory? I know we went through it at the outset. When does the public comment period end on this?
August
the current
2nd.
comment, August 2nd?
Yeah, which would
Okay.
be,
That's just a few days from now.
yeah, it's actually Sunday, end of the weekend, right, Ethan? Sunday night at midnight,
Okay.
11:59.
Okay. I think it's pretty important. I mean, if we can't talk about the timeline right on this online right now, I mean, I think it's pretty important to, at the very, very, very least, extend that comment period, so that all of these jurisdictions that want to be able to, put in some meaningful comment about how this might affect their jurisdiction. I think it would be very inappropriate on our part to at least not extend that comment period. And I don't know if you mentioned we can't talk about it on this call, but I would boy, be willing to make a motion to at least do that at this point, so that, you know, we don't want to further alienate these people or bury them any more than they already are. I'm actually feeling very bad about doing this to them right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Porter. And that, yeah, I don't know if that's a discussion we can have about that, or if Director Bateman, if that's something that we'll have to take offline.
That would be nice to know if we can discuss it, you know, right now, about maybe at least extending that comment period. Is
Just a
that
comment period, yeah.
I mean, as a starter, I mean, we should get all the information available that people's thoughts before we make the next step. So it would be awfully nice to know if we can at least discuss extending the comment period to let these other folks get their thoughts in. Is that something for Steve or for Director Bateman?
Yeah, Director Bateman.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. Again, Brenda Bateman, Director of the department. The reason I hesitated earlier to make any kind of unilateral decision is that, of course, this rulemaking and a whole host of rulemakings that we're working on in the housing space are under our work plan that have already been approved at a higher level. However, these are your rules, and you can certainly direct us to extend a comment period. We know that there are many more folks out there who have not had a chance to comment yet. And I think that more input is always good. It's always helpful. And there may be details and ideas that we haven't heard yet. So I'll leave it to you, Chair.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for that, Director. So Chair, is that can we make a motion to extend the comment period during this meeting?
We could. I'm not sure what the mechanics of it need to be, or if we just direct staff at this point to do that. And I think that we're going to want to make sure we hear and understand from staff the impact of any changes to that. You know, one of the things I will say is that, you know, it's been a published timeline for you know, a fair amount of time. Folks are definitely busy, but it is a date that has been known to folks. And so my inclination would be, if we were to extend it, is to not extend it too much further than, say, midweek, like August 5th. That's a few more days for folks who are already working towards an August 2nd deadline. That potentially doesn't impact our timeline moving towards August still. We'd have to work under the assumption that we're still going to deliberate and in August. So that would be my proposal. So I'm not thinking too much more than a few days for folks, just to wrap up comments and make sure they get in. So that's kind of where I'm at if we want to actually consider that.
And I would, and thank you for that. And I appreciate that. My thought, and based on what we've heard so far today, you know, and talking with some of the local planners, you know, I know that they're still, you know, especially for some of these smaller jurisdictions, they're still digging out and you know, making their way through the forest there, with everything else that we've done to them. And I've been in similar situations before, not on the land use planning side or building code side, but with others, when we just get inundated with rules. It's really hard to keep up with all of that when you've got a limited staff. I would suggest giving them another 30 days, in my opinion. And so, you know, and I'd be happy to make a motion to extend, but I want to be able to hear from the other commissioners. So I will step off now and circle back here in a little bit.
So 30 days would mean that we would not be deliberating on the passage of the rules in August. And again, I would offer that at this moment, we need to continue working from the assumption that we will be doing that in August. So we could also go into the August meeting with the public comments potential still open, but that creates some real issues. But let's hear from other commissioners if that's okay, Commissioner Porter.
Absolutely. I just want to be careful here for, you know, that we don't have the tail wagging the dog. You know, that timeline is ambitious and it's admirable. But I think getting this right may be more important. So thank you.
Always. Thank you. Commissioner Condor.
Thank you. I appreciate the testimony from everyone. It's good to get an array of opinions and thoughts on this. I think that, you know, having the League of Oregon Cities is really helpful because that's representing, you know, all of the incorporated cities for the state of Oregon, as well as having the Association of Counties, which in theory is representing all of the counties. So those are pretty big voices, and I'll be interested in seeing their written testimony because I think we're seeing some reoccurring themes with setbacks, some height things and some fire life safety that I think are good points that we should look at. And I do agree with the commission that we can't take this lightly. We've got to make sure that we take it right. From a developer's perspective, though, I also want to, you know, say that having worked in multiple jurisdictions in the state of Oregon, they all work very differently. And predictability is really important. And so I do believe that having some streamlined kind of like parameters can be very helpful to produce more housing. Again, you know, as I mentioned earlier, before the testimony, I do believe in kind of an incentive-based program if we might want to consider thinking about not only having some of these parameters, but letting cities adopt like a community design standards that within a box could be a fair way to, you know, bridge the gap here because some jurisdictions may not care, right? They're like, we just want to get housing. And if this incentivizes somebody to come into our city with their pre-approved plan, then right on, right? And there may be other cities that are more sensitive, but they still have to have at the end of the day a prescriptive path. And I think that's what the state is trying to do is get a prescriptive path with a right to build. And that I really, really endorse. So I would say, I don't mind keeping the comment period open for maybe 2 more weeks. Because I do feel that we had a large constituency submitting information and also having the League of Cities and the counties as a voice for a lot. So I'm not sure if opening it for a whole nother month is going to give us a lot of different feedback. I think you're going to see the same types of narratives around setbacks, fire life safety, height. I believe those are things we should dig into and look at. But so I don't want to prolong it too much because I do think that we need to come to decisions and get going on things, but I want to do it right. So that's it.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Commissioner. Commissioner Scar.
Thank you. I agree with many things that my fellow commissioners have said up front of me. I do think an extension of the comment period would be helpful. Certainly what you hear often the initial comment period is stop, it won't work. And hoping that if we give 2 more weeks, what we can get from people is here's what would work. Here's some suggestions, right? Because I know in talking with my own staff, they have been at stop, this won't work. And I really tried to have conversation to push and say, but what will? We have to do this. So what will, right? So I think if we can signal to our local partners, and I would suggest signal to our developers as well, because I really appreciate hearing Commissioner Condor's comments, what will? What are the keys here that are magic that we need to put together? I hear certainty from developers. I hear it all the time in my communities, right? It's one of the reasons that Tillamook County went into Senate Bill 406 and jumped into the Middle Housing Code was because we wanted to give certainty. We were tired of constantly being, drugged through the appeals process. So it's there. It's there. And so I guess I would love to see the public comment period be open for a little longer. I would love to signal to our city, county, and all partners, developer partners, everyone who's commenting on this, don't just tell us what you don't like. Tell us how we do this. Give us that magic key that we're looking for that puts this together, that makes it to work. So I would love to see that piece of it. Because it is a very challenging process where once public comment stops, we can no longer engage with and talk with those cities, counties, developers, equity partners, all of the folks. And these rules didn't drop that long ago, and they don't know where we're sitting until we have this conversation today. And now we have signaled to them, hey, here's what we're thinking so far. Boy, that is actually a really rich space to jump into further discussion as opposed to a space to end discussion. So I think that's sort of where my head is going, is I would love to see the public comment open for a little bit longer. I'm not against, considering it in August if we can get some of that really good work in this window of time and have a way to stay in conversation with all of our partners to bring forward the right thing. So I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. Really appreciate that, Commissioner. And I think, yeah, it's a reminder again that there is a fair body of work out there that brings forward a lot of the points that may already be out there, and that the intent of closing the public comment period is for staff to go away and make those potential revisions going into August. So they sort of can't begin that work until the public comment period closes. So that's the balance we're trying to strike there in closing the public comment period for staff and then for us beyond that. Commissioner Falconer.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I'm really interested in hearing, and I just appreciate that last point that you just made, because what I would love to hear a little bit more of, I really appreciated, Ethan and staff, doing a little bit of sort of ground truthing. And so, of course, I'm thinking, when I hear the concerns about setbacks, for example, in relation to fire safety and delivering of public services, I think about all of the places where I frequent and I live, and I've been around in the state where setbacks are not required at all. And so how are those jurisdictions delivering those services and providing those services? Because I think that that's, maybe an important reaction we haven't heard yet. And so I'd like to hear maybe from, staff's sort of reaction to, to some of those considerations, and how maybe that might be reflected in the rules and in the application of this. Another point, I also would love to hear a little bit of a reaction from staff, and maybe this is, combined LCDC and building code, around, some of the concerns that from a couple of different jurisdictions that reported that some of these rules may be more restrictive than local code, or provide or less of a dissent in, a dissent to, I'm getting tripped up on my words here, may actually hinder or, maybe promote less dense and more affordable housing. I hear that, and I'm sensitive to those concerns in particular, and I'd love to hear, staff's reaction to how maybe that might be prevented. I think about sort of like, is there some backstop? Is there some sort of like, well, if, these apply if a local code is more restrictive, or these apply if a local code, I hope that at least that concern or that sort of thought is getting through, even if I don't formulate a perfect question. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, go ahead. Ethan, I'll also say, Commissioner Falconer, I thought it was interesting to hear that from Ben also, that the code potentially could be more restrictive, but even more so for me, having worked on the residential infill project in Portland, that it might actually undermine that work that was done to sort of stop the McMansions in Portland, and that this project could actually do that. I thought, oh wait, I didn't even consider that unintended potentially consequence. Ethan, did you want to respond to Commissioner Falconer?
Yeah, if I could, Chair. Commissioner Falconer, it's a good question. I actually think both of your questions can be answered with the same answer, which is that the policy intent of the Oregon Homes program is to set a statewide standard that in its nature seems to or attempts to strike a balance where some are going to fall above that line and some will fall below that line in terms of the standards that they're applying. That statewide standard by its nature is going to create a situation where there may be differences, and that it may be more prescriptive for some jurisdictions and less or more advantageous or less cause less of a barrier in other jurisdictions. And the intent of the Oregon Homes program is to standardize those regulations across the state in those particular development scenarios. And just by that nature, we will have areas in those codes that will be, the 5-foot setbacks, for example. Some jurisdictions will have a much greater setback requirement than that, and some will not have any. setback requirement. And by establishing a number, there you're going to have those kind of differences kind of towards that mean. And so what we do know, though, is in order to set that statewide standard and meet that policy goal of House Bill 2258, is that there is not, or it's the state's interpretation of that bill to not deviate or defer to local standards in establishing that program, because that would be outside of the intent of the program to set that statewide standard. And so, that's the rationale or the justification or the reason why the proposed rules kind of shape up the way that they have and are in front of you today, is that they do pick a particular specific standard in these instances, and they are intended to be standardized across the state, even if those are more restrictive or less restrictive than what the local government applies now.
Thank you, Ethan. Commissioner Warren.
Yeah, so a couple things. First, I just want to say huge thanks to Ethan and Becky and other staff. I mean, I know this has been a big lift on a very, very fast timeline, and this is a completely different approach to rulemaking than we've ever done before. So I just want to say huge thanks and appreciation for all your work. And I want to dig into that, the kind of last point there is that this is a very different approach than this commission's taken in my tenure here, and which is almost 7 years now. We have never once adopted standards into administrative rule that will just automatically apply, right? We've always required for there to be some sort of local process for adoption. And oftentimes we provide pretty prescriptive standards for that process, right? Using middle housing as an example, we said, okay, local governments, you now have to allow middle housing on all lots that you'd allow single unit homes, right? And the standard was you cannot provide additional standards that are more prescriptive than you would apply to single unit homes. So there was an opportunity for local conversations and local dialogue around what that means for their communities, and opportunity for local communities to also present that to their community. So the community is aware of what's happening. This process, and why I have an issue with it, I think more than anything, because I actually think what you've done in these rules, Ethan and Becky, is really cool, right? From a practitioner standpoint, I think there are some really amazing pieces to this approach. But it negates that local conversation, it negates that local ability for local jurisdictions to say, hey, community, by the way, this is happening, right? You can expect now to see these things happen in your neighborhood. Dear neighborhood association, someone can now build an apartment outright in your neighborhood, and you have nothing to say about it, right? No cities are going to have that conversation. Some cities may choose to, but they're not required to, right? And I think some cities will do that because they know that's the right approach, and some cities will not. And so someone is going to eventually have an apartment built next to them, and they will have no say in the issue. And I have a really big concern with that. Not to say that I believe people should be able to say what happens next to them should dictate what actually gets built, but that's the standard we've set in this state since 1973, right? So this is a completely different approach. And so my hesitancy to move fast on this rulemaking is that in itself. And so when we talk about extending the public comment period, I'm comfortable extending it all the way to our next hearing, honestly, because there needs to be an opportunity for back and forth. Once again, once Ethan and Becky make adjustments to the rules based off of the testimony they've received, it would be nice to hear again from local jurisdictions, like, did we get it right this time? Is this something you can actually work? But on a set timeline like we have right now, especially if it's August 5th or whatever, no one will get to have that opportunity again. And we've heard loud and clear from local jurisdictions that these rules as written are not going to work for them. So we will not have the opportunity to say or hear, like, did we get it right this time again? And because this is such a big deal in my mind, that I think we should afford that to our local partners.
Thanks, Commissioner Warren. That, as always, great perspective from a local practitioner. The conference room, Memorial Conference Room, has a hand up, so I don't know if that's Alexis
Yeah.
or potentially Director Bateman.
Thank you, Chair Lasso. Alexis Hammer, Legislative and Policy Manager here at DLCD. And responding actually to comments back to Ethan and Commissioner Falconer's prompt, I just wanted to emphasize everything Ethan said was correct. And I want to emphasize that in establishing this statewide standard, that standard is optional, and that the developer has the ability to choose between using the existing standards that are in place at the local zoning level, or selecting the statewide standardized approach. And so if there was something where there was more permissive opportunities with the local zoning code than the statewide standard, nothing would preclude the developer from choosing that pathway.
May I add, Chair?
Director Bateman,
Director
were you going to add something?
Yes, Director Bateman here with a note on the timing. And so I'm taking in all of the input about potential calendar pieces and just wanted to lay some pieces out there. We've been working really hard in the department to get away from a situation where we're taking comment all the way up to an adoption so that we're not really hearing things at the last minute and trying to do things on the fly. So that's a culture and a practice that we've been trying to move towards, is give the commission some space to think on and marinate in what they've heard and then come into a deliberation and adoption. But that said, some of the calendar pieces we've talked about today, if you were to extend the comment period by another 3 days, that would then give folks time to incorporate the things that they heard and come back to an August meeting. If, however, you feel you need more time, that the changes would be more substantive than that, and really much more work is required, then we could look at a meeting in one of our already existing time periods scheduled for later this year in October or December. I would say, I just want to note here, we've been doing a lot of work with the natural resources advisors in the governor's office over the past 2 years about what should rulemaking look like. And one of the conversations that we've taken up in those sort of roundtables is for more complicated rulemakings. It's not unheard of, and other agencies do this, to take it in a couple of rounds, so that when you have a draft that comes back, if it looks quite different or something that folks weren't expecting, there's another chance to look at it. Now that just elongates the timeline. It pushes us way forward, but we have a little bit of time given the January 1 deadline. So one thing you might consider would be extending this current comment period by 3 days, and then having a draft in front of you in August for continued discussion and input, with a adoption date scheduled a little further out in the year. So it would give you another round, which is logistically a nightmare, but that's okay. That's why we're here. That's part of our job and part of our approach. So it would be a little bit more complicated than we've done in the past, but that might help you get all the input in properly with some breathing time and thinking time in between.
Thank you, Director Bateman. I just want to pause for a second and do a little time check. We've been sitting very, very focused for 2.5 hours. I think looks like we might have coming a discussion about what we'd like to do timing wise. And so I would propose, before we do that, to move into just a short break, unless Commissioner Bennett, unless you have something that's pressing or would want to be part of that discussion, we're okay. So could we take a 12-minute break and come back at 10:50 at 10 till? Does that work for everybody? Just please stand up and get yourself something to drink. I can finish my breakfast and attend to other needs. So let's come back at 10 minutes till. All right, we're at 10 till, so if folks could start gathering again. And let us know if you're back by turning your camera back on. Fantastic. Look at that. What a punctual crew this is. All right. Welcome back. All right. Commissioner Bennett, you had your hand up before we were going away on break. Is there something you wanted to bring forward?
Thank you, Chair. Since often we're caught in that we have our hearing and then the public comment closes, or just the public comment closes on a number of our topics, and then folks go, well, my stuff wasn't included, but we can't really ask them about it because it's closed. And we get into this kind of a quandary where we want to be responsive. Obviously, the yay or nay or why didn't even get included. And I think that pushing it so that having the opportunity where folks can go, yes, you included it, but then other folks can go, you know, that really is not going to work for us. And as during the break, Chair, I was thinking that, you know, we need to include the community at large, along with AOC and LOC, and we need to include the developers, as was pointed out. Without the developers, this is all just a really academic exercise, so we need to make sure that we have all of the voices and the voices for some of those other communities that we often don't hear. And, you know, we've really, as a commission, have made an effort to reach out and hear their voices and make sure if they want to comment, that they comment, that this is something that's going to be of value for them too. So I guess I really appreciate the work, the director, and I appreciate Ethan and staff, because this changes their work schedule dramatically, that we're doing this. But I think that maybe in August having a hearing versus that it's going, or not having a hearing, but continuing this, and where we're not perhaps making a decision, is really valuable, because we do want to hear the voices, but also there's some silent voices that we may not have heard, or at least that way out here on the ends of the earth, I haven't heard, I'll be honest, that we want to make sure that really that the development community can do it, because as was mentioned by one of the mayors, you know, it's infrastructure, which is costs, which is really one of the deciding factors. And if by doing setbacks, that changing those requirements, that we impact how the infrastructure costs are going to be, that's something to be well aware of. Also, has the fire marshal's office commented about what one of the speakers brought up about the 200 feet versus the 100 feet, and are all of those issues adequately addressed, so we're not just kicking the can or ball down the road where a city has to try to now work through this. So I'm appreciative of Director Bateman's comments there, and I guess I'm in support of.
Great, thank you. So yeah, Commissioner Scott.
Thank you. This is more of a logistical question, I think, about how rulemaking can and must work, since it's my first real run at this. So when the staff brings us a set of rules and we are looking at approving them, do we have to approve what's brought to us? How much wordsmithing can be done before you have to then put them back out because they were, I'm thinking of my Board of Forestry stuff, right? If we make a substantive change to what's in front of the Board of Forestry, for example, then they have to go back out for public comment because it was a substantive change. So I'm curious in this forum, as we think about how much time for public comment, how much time for the staff to be able to really integrate that work. I'm thinking about that August meeting and saying, do we have to have that final language if we are to approve something? Or is it more fluid? I realize we all want to be able to step away and think about things before we approve them. So I'm trying to figure out how the rules fit into sort of the best practice, fits into the aggressive timeline, and how that all fits together.
Yeah, appreciate that. And I don't know if Steve Shipsey or maybe someone else could answer that question about if the commission proposes changes to the rules in the moment, if there's some kind of timeline that those need to be published in, and maybe is there anybody that can answer that from the staff side? Maybe even Casario.
Chair Lazo, I'll chime in. I think Steve isn't here at the moment, and I think it would be best to wait and hear from Steve exactly what it is. A very, I would say that we need to be cautious about that because there is actually recent precedent from last fall related to a case with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife that has significantly narrowed the ability to between what is noticed and what is adopted. And I wouldn't want to make that judgment independently without counsel.
Okay.
And I would imagine he'll be back shortly.
Okay. Thank you, Alexis. Yeah, and I know that, from my experience on the commission, and maybe that is something that's changed, that we have changed some items, during the adoption meeting. But I don't know if there's a threshold that has or has not been met, or if that's changed. Okay. Steve, I don't know if you heard the question. I can repeat it. The question is around if the commission were to make changes to the rules, say at the August meeting, do we have to re-notice those, or would we be able to adopt them? Is there a threshold that gets initiated for some kind of re-notice and publishing?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Generally, as long as we're within the scope of our initial notice, we're probably okay. The pause there is not just because I'm a lawyer. It's because there's been some recent case law where the Fish and Wildlife Commission adopted some rules, and the Court of Appeals on Judicial Review of the rule adoption determined that they were not properly noticed. So it's going to be the classic lawyer depends answer, but I think we can try to work on it and have, particularly if the commission is saying we're wanting to hear from people on these subjects, and that's where the court would be upset with us, is if they felt that what we adopted was different than what someone who would have looked at our notice would have been aware that we were considering adopting, so that they could participate if they chose to.
And my sense is that the discussion we're having and the elements that we're considering all stay within the sideboards of that. I mean, it's a pretty focused topic that we're looking at. Again, I don't know what's in the minds of everyone, but that's my sense anyway. To that end, here's what I would propose for folks. I'm someone who I think that we can try to balance all these elements and still try to get things done in the timelines that we're given. So what I would propose is that we extend this initial public comment period for a short period until the 5th. So like I said, we extend it for those first 3 days, allow folks to finish submitting their comments. Again, there's a big body of work that we already know about that would allow staff to begin to make changes potentially to this to the rules. And then we would still have draft rules that come to us in August, and we would actually take the opportunity if we were ready to. And the other thing that we would add to that is in August, we would actually open the public comment period again at the August meeting, so that folks could come and comment to us about the rules that have been published. And we could consider at that point whether or not those folks have been satisfied in the way the rules have progressed. And we could choose to adopt them at that point, or we could choose to move to October to have adopted the rules at that time and have other changes made, and then proceed like that, and actually leave that public comment period open from the meeting for a short period after that again, And so we'd work then towards an October adoption. So again, leave open the opportunity to adopt in August by having a short extension of the public comment period here, get draft rules to consider in August, open the public comment at the hearing, at the meeting in August, and leave it open for a little bit of time if we decide to move the rule adoption to October. So that's what I would propose we do. Commissioner Warren?
Here, just a clarification question. So when you say leave the public comment period open, would people still be allowed to provide written testimony? Because I feel like with technical rule testimony, it's good to have it written down because it's pretty hard to recite like these technical changes or suggestions in 3 minutes.
Agreed with you. Yeah. So I think it's just a question of timing. And so because the rules, the proposed rules for the August meeting would be published a week or two before, probably. I guess I'm not exactly sure the date. That would be public. Folks could review those, prepare a written testimony, provide that to us if they wanted to, but also have the opportunity to speak and us to have the opportunity to converse with them to say, okay, did this meet, the expectation that you had in this time period, right? So the hope is it would do both. The difficulty is if we open the public comment period at the meeting, we wouldn't get the written testimony until that point. And so it might be kind of hard. You remember, in the past when we did that, we were getting a lot of that written testimony, that day of the meeting, we couldn't really review it very well. So that may be another logistic that we have to consider. But yeah, I think we'd want also to have written testimony. I agree with you 100%. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, and thank you for that clarification, Chair. There have been very few meetings and hearings that we've had with such a huge resounding wait. and so I'm just really taken by the number and the type of people that have come out this morning just to say, but wait, there's all these issues. And so I would feel far more comfortable if we requested, or if we kept the public comment period open this time and for 2 weeks. If we can give people a couple of weeks, especially for those folks that are just now learning about the rule, and granted they've been out there, but they've been busy. And then asking staff to meet with the local practitioners and the developers, at least that were on the RAC, and work through some of those issues, during that 2-week period as well. And I Commissioner Warren is our local on the ground guy. And so I would love to hear his thoughts on that, but I would feel much more comfortable if we could extend it for at least 2 weeks, just to make sure that those people, he's nodding his head. I think he's agreeing with that. So that would be my position, because it is just such a strong no weight that's coming out to us through this.
Thanks, Commissioner Porter. And again, I think that timeline precludes us from the opportunity to pass rules in August, is what I would say. Consider passing rules in August. Commissioner Warren.
Yeah, just responding to Commissioner Porter. One thing that we've done in local jurisdictions is say, public comment period's open until X date. If you would like for your public comment to be considered in the draft rule update, submit it prior to this date. Anything submitted after that date will only be considered by, in this case, the commission.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, so we could set an internal deadline at which point the staff could begin drafting any changes to the rules that would come before us in August. But public comment could still continue to come in that we could consider. I think that's a possibility. Commissioner Porter.
Can we give it a little bit more than 3 days? Can we give it 1 week? I'm still somewhat perplexed by this just overwhelming strong drive to pass them in August if we have until January. It's not it's not making a lot of sense to me as to why feel so rushed right now to potentially preclude comment in order to get it done. So that's part of where I'm getting a little wrapped around the axle is we haven't, through our December meeting to get this done. I don't know. I don't know why we're pushing so hard for August. And so, can we push it out a little bit farther than 3 days?
Well, the 3 days definitely is the time horizon for us to consider in August. And I think the question about August is really related to other interested parties, particularly I think the executive branch and their desire for us to get this on the ground and to get the program moving. And I think that we're in a housing crisis situation, and this is how we all respond to crisis. And again, I've been in the RAC. I've been in the RAC for 6 months. There's a large body of work. I think.
Am I frozen or is it the chair that's frozen? Okay.
We'll give Chair a moment to come back again. Sorry, everybody.
While we're waiting for him, I think Commissioner Warren's approach would be great. If I don't know, Commissioner Warren, if this is more familiar to you, your approach, than it certainly is to me. I don't know if you would be willing to kind of expand on that a little bit. And maybe make a motion to that effect.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not certain we need a motion. I'll look to Steve for that. I think we can probably just kind of provide general direction to staff of how we'd like to approach it. But I'd want to leave that up to staff because Ethan is going to be the one and his team who would have to sift through all the testimony and then decide which testimony makes sense to address in the new draft rules. So I would certainly leave up to them. I think from my perspective, what would be more interesting to hear is that testimony that comes in maybe after the draft rules are republished for the commission to consider, right? So did staff address the comments in a meaningful way that makes these rules more workable for local jurisdictions? Do we get it right? And are they ready for the commission to consider for adoption? So I certainly look to Deputy Director Green and Ethan's team as to what that timeline should be like. But I think any additional testimony that comes in that's just addressed to the commission for our consideration, I think would be super helpful.
And I think just so that we can provide clear direction, I think an actual motion would be helpful, so that we can also get a up-down vote on it and have the specifics in a motion. Deputy Director Green.
Thank you. Just thank you, Chair Lazo. It's Kirsten here. Just wondering if we could talk a little bit about the merits of closing and reopening and invite Ethan to kind of weigh in. There are some logistics around producing the packet, as you've noted. So Commissioner Warren's offering like a soft close, but leaving the comment period open so that community members could comment on the next draft, which I think is what commissioners are calling for, which is, hey, let's see if there's a next draft that could be more responsive, that could be published and allow people to get comment on that as well, and still hold the possibility of an adoption hearing in August. So if it's okay with Director Bateman, hear from Ethan.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I think just to shine some light on the timeline a little bit here, in order to have something published and ready for the commission to consider, or even have packet materials, honestly, for to go in the agenda for August, we really need a completed set of comments to respond to refer back to, and the timing, like August 5th, for example, is allows us that opportunity and space to both take all the comments, review them, summarize them, respond to them where we're able, and have the reviews, the actual literal production of the rules and all the reviews associated with those, and publication to the commission. And so you actually have some time to review them. That is cutting it as close as would be comfortable for staff. But I think the opportunity for the continuation or the continuing opening of that public comment period allows folks to be able to provide comments both on the rules and the program as it's described right now, and future drafts and versions of those rules heading into August for commission consideration. So just from a strictly logistical staff perspective, we would love the opportunity to have some sort of soft close of, we were responding to these set of comments that we received by this date, so we can actually tether the next version of rules to those comments, while there's an opportunity for other commentary to come in.
Thanks, Ethan. Commissioners, did that provide a framework for a motion? Yeah, Commissioner Porter.
Sorry, I keep beating this one. Yeah, I just don't know if 3 days, the 5th is that feels like it's really tight. And I want to again look to Commissioner Warren. I know I keep pestering you, but boy, it would sure be nice to give people more than an additional 3 days. That just seems pretty. I would be inclined to make a motion still for the 2 weeks, because I just don't know why. I mean, we can call an extra meeting in September or something. I'm not quite sure why August is just this drop dead date when we have till January. I just feel it's so important to get this right, because it's going to affect so many jurisdictions. And I've seen cases here locally where we have a state mandate, and it's created so many heartaches for not only the agencies that are trying to implement these, but also for the whole community. And I would hate to see this be another one of those instances, because we're just feeling like we have to do it. We're driving toward the timeline, as opposed to something substantive and workable for these local jurisdictions around the state. I'm really struggling with that tight of a timeline. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. And then Deputy Director Green, looks like maybe you wanted to jump in on something.
So response, if I could, really quick, Commissioner Chiarlazzo, to hopefully assuage Commissioner Porter's concerns, the comment period would stay open, so that what we're calling is like a soft close is like we would send out a gov delivery and post to our website that we're extending the public comment period to and through basically to the August hearing. And that we request all, as many comments as possible come in by August 5th. That would allow staff to prepare a packet based on what we have today, and any others that just need a few 48 more hours breathing room next week. However, if folks, needed more time with that and wanted to respond to the new set of rules that we would publish, ideally, at a minimum 1 week before the hearing, but ideally our practice has been 2. There might be something in between there pragmatically, but we would then publish a new set of rules, in considering all the guidance, coordination among the executive branch, with our partners at, BCDS and others, to publish a new set. Folks still can comment on that because the public comment period has stayed open to and through commission. So Commissioner Porter, I don't know if that provides any comfort. That's what we're talking about, sort of a soft invitation to submit comments with additional time by August 5th, but still actually leaving it open.
Okay, no, that's helpful, Deputy Director. Will staff have time then to be able to meet with the various interested parties, and especially those ones that are on the RAC that came back and said, hey, watch the last RAC meeting, some of these concerns that we have expressed haven't been addressed. Will staff be able to spend the time to talk with them to try to work through those issues in that amount of time before they draft the next round.
Chair Lazo and Commissioner Porter, I defer to Ethan. He's somehow stretches his day beyond what seems to be humanly possible on the regular. So, Ethan, would you care to respond, please?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Chair Lazo and Commissioner Porter. I think really any kind of limit on our ability to meet with partners would be bound by the close of the public comment period, right? We're not able to meet outside of the public comment period, but if that's extended or shifted in some way, we can meet with those folks as long as that public comment period is open.
So just for clarification, so the close of the public comment period then would be the extended comment period beyond the 5th.
Right. It would be to and through the August hearing, ma'am. Thank you, Commissioner. Sorry.
Okay, and then but you'd have to conclude all those meetings before you sent out your final draft, be it 1 week or 2 weeks before the next meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'd move pretty expeditiously to get those scheduled.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Scar.
I think that clarifies it for me. I think the question is just whether we're ready to provide that guidance and in what format we need to provide that guidance, be it a motion or what.
Yeah, I think a motion so that since we've been ranging a little bit to have the specific dates and direction. So
Okay.
that would be my recommendation.
Okay, Commissioner Condor, I know you had your hand up. Is it relevant to that, or shall I go ahead and make a motion? Okay, so then I would move that we keep public comment open through the August 27, 28 LCDC meeting for this rulemaking, and that staff use comment in hand currently, along with conversations with its RAC members to integrate what they have heard thus far into a new set of rules to be published as expeditiously as possible, so that comment on the new rules will be open during that same window of time.
Thank you, Commissioner Scar. I think, would you consider a friendly amendment that we set an actual date by which staff will begin to incorporate rules in hand? And I think that what folks had considered was maybe that 3-day extension period, so that as of August 5th, staff will be responding to comments in hand at that point, not just comments in hand today.
Yeah, I understood there was going to be comments in hand plus conversation with RAC members. So I think that's where the 3 days may get a little tight. That would be an Ethan question as to exactly when he wants to say, I'm gonna start, writing and preparing. So I hate to do the 3 days on that one, given that we asked for quite a bit. So Ethan.
Chair and Commissioner Scar, I wonder if there's a hair we could split in terms of the written comments by the state while conversations continue, maybe 6th or 7th based on schedules with our partners.
Yeah, that works for me. I'd like to leave it, I think, to Ethan's professional discretion as to when he has that body of work and when he needs to get started to make sure he has something to us for the package. If we can do that.
So maybe we could make it clear to folks that written comments by Friday the 7th, end of business, so 5 p.m. And then so written comments and then other conversations during the public comment period that will remain open through our August 27th and 28th meetings.
That works.
Okay.
For me.
So is there a second to that motion?
Chair, may I just ask a clarifying question? So when we say written comments before the 5th, does that mean we're closing written comments at the 5th?
I think the 7th. I think so. That the motion, as I understand it, Commissioner Scar, correct me if I'm not right, is that staff will consider written comments through the end of business day on the 7th, written comments through the 7th, and then other conversations through the open public comment period as they are writing draft rules to present to us in August.
Yeah, I think the trick is that public comments will continue to come in because they will begin to address the new rule. So I think it's more of an awareness for people that their public comment, in order to get incorporated into adopt this amended rule would be through the 7th, because there is just this need to do the body of work. And then comments will begin coming in for the new rule. But if we receive it after the 7th, it just will be too late to integrate it, is how I'm understanding it. So, yeah. So that gives everybody a little bit more time. They actually have a week and a half. So hopefully Commissioner Porter, I know it feels still a little tight, but because we're really providing comments to 2 versions of the rule under this public comment period, I get that staff has to have time to integrate.
Question then, and thank you, Commissioner Scar. That helps. And this is kind of a tricky one to try to put into a motion, but you've done a great job. And so just a clarifying question then. So the comments that continue to come in, if we get written comments in, and then comments that come into to Ethan in that time frame, and especially those that come in after the second set of the updated rule set. Will those be official public comments, or since those are the soft ones, will they still be considered?
Now, the public comment period will be open, so they will be part of the record. So anything that comes in, or anybody that wants to testify in person at our public meeting through the end of the meetings on the 28th.
Thank you.
Oh, I shouldn't say that. I'm sorry. Through the end of the agenda item at our August 27th and 28th meeting, because we will have open public comment during that meeting, and we can't have that on agenda items. So through the end of the close of the agenda item, and we don't know for sure where it will fall in the 27th and 28th meeting. Mr. Bennett.
Procedurally, I was going to get us back online by seconding the motion. So
we can have discussion, right?
Yes.
Seconded by Commissioner Bennett. And let's go to the Memorial Conference Room to see if there's something that we need logistically from them.
Thank you, Chair. Director Bateman again. We'll put all this together into a Gov delivery so that we've made an announcement that folks who are not currently on this call, that everyone will be aware. And we'll use language that is similar to the types of things we use when we're doing, for instance, an evergreen recruitment. That is to say, we're leaving the public comment open. Any comments received through August 7th will be incorporated into the next draft that we'll bring to the August meeting. But the public comment remains open, and we'll take and make sure we've got on the record and well documented any public comment that comes in.
Thank you. Yes, I believe that captures it. Further discussion from Commission about how we're proceeding.
Yeah, can we hear from Mr. Shipsey, please?
What's that, Warren?
Can we hear from Mr. Shipsey, please?
Oh, yeah. Are we doing okay, Steve?
Yeah, we're good. We're doing great. What I would suggest is that maybe we set the comment period through the first day of the commission hearing, endeavor to have the hearing on the first day. And that way, if, the commission hears something that they want Ethan and I to spend the night working on, and we can come back the next morning with a revision, but, shoot for the first day with that option of bringing it back to you the next day.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's the intention generally with the agenda. Okay. So I think the motion would close that public comment period again at the end of the agenda item for the Moore program rulemaking, and it's likely to be on the first day. And with the language that Director Bateman said about the evergreen comments being open for this rulemaking through that period. All right. Any other discussion? Great. Denise, I think that this wasn't in the script, but I think we can call the roll.
Commissioner Bennett,
Aye.
Commissioner Falconer,
Aye.
Commissioner Condor,
Aye.
Commissioner Porter,
Aye.
Commissioner Scar,
Aye.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Chair Lazo.
Aye. Great. The motion carries. Thank you all for that work. I think we came to a good spot. And again, this isn't a prescription for us to pass this in August, but certainly a consideration that we could do so if we get there. And staff appreciate your flexibility on this. You're willing to work on it. I know that's going to be some work for you all, but appreciate the work you've all done to this point and that the work that we've heaped on you at this point. So, but as you've heard here, not only from us, but from our partners, this is important work for the state and for us resolving this housing crisis. So we greatly appreciate the work that you all are doing. Okay, with that, I believe that probably calls it a day, doesn't it? Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Chair Lazo. I just wanted to commend you and thank you for your patience and staying steady through this. Good job.
Anytime. Yeah, it was. I just didn't want to schedule a September meeting since that'd be virtually impossible for me. But we're good. I think we've got a way forward, and I'm excited to see where we land. It's, having been part of the process, I know it's not easy, and I don't think it gets any easier from here. So super exciting conversations ahead, and I really appreciated all of us digging in today and really kind of working and massaging this thing. So can't wait till August. So with that, Denise or Director Bateman, unless there's anything else, I will adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
34 minutes ahead of schedule, as it were.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Take care. And especially you, Commissioner Bennett. We're thinking of you all out there.